Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 97 of ThROH The Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor show by show from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dame. The other voice you will hear that you hear on every episode is Matt Feuerstein. But today you will hear one more voice, and it's a voice you have never heard on ThROH The Years before, and it is long overdue. So long-time listeners will know I've told this anecdote a couple times before, but you're going to hear it again one more time because this is the most appropriate place finally to tell this anecdote, and I've already told it a couple times. But the origin of this show was Matt and I were friends back when we were online friends, back when we were knee-high to grasshoppers, as the old folks might say. We just
I was about 1 inch shorter than I am now when we first started chatting online.
So, okay, when we were younger, when we were teenagers, and then years and years later, Matt starts a podcast, List 'em and Learn, which was a great show. He invites me on, we do an episode. He invites me on again to do a Ring of Honor episode, and right after that episode's done recording, Matt messages me and it's like, maybe we should try and do like a podcast that reviews Ring of Honor, like from the start. And he referenced a show that we were mutual fans of, called Where the Big Boys Play, which was a show that reviewed WCW show by show from the beginning. Not every TV show, obviously, but every pay-per-view and Clash. And I think they got up to 1993. There's a whole bunch of episodes out there on the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network. You have to search. It's getting harder to find them, unfortunately.
I'm going to say they got up to 1994, but we'll let our guests confirm.
We'll see, Matt. We'll see. I would bet a little money on this one. But
all right, fair enough.
I remember, and that was kind of like just the idea of if we could have as much fun as those guys seem to be having and come as like half as good as fun as that show was, we'd be doing good. And then when we were plugging the show, one of the first people that ever sent us a positive feedback on a message board was one of the two hosts of the show, our guest today, a person who, by the way, did not know either of us from Adam. So just like maybe the first person that did not actually know us to praise the show. He got us on the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network, which we remain to this day. You might know him from his great post on the Pro Wrestling Only message board as Soup23, I believe is his username. So many good posts. Like anytime I want to read a good review of a match, like they have a whole section on the ProWrestlingOnly.com forum where it's just like a whole forum devoted to like segments of matches and interview segments from wrestling history dated by year. And I always a lot of times go, I wonder if our guest today has like said something about it, because I just want to read whatever he has to think, because I just think he's one of the most interesting, well-versed people on wrestling. You might know him from Where the Big Boys Play. You might know him today from Wrestling Warzone, the Monday Night Wars, which is a podcast he does with JT Rosero, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is covering the Monday Night Wars of the 90s, Raw and Nitro. Long overdue, which is why I gave him a long introduction, because this is what I can best describe as a guilt introduction. Chad Campbell, one of the best wrestling podcasters out there. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, wow. What an intro. I don't know if I can follow that, but no, I'm very appreciative. And when I first saw that there was a retrospective Ring of Honor podcast, it piqued my interest, and I'd heard Matt do the audio, kind of the top 50 ROH wrestlers, and I enjoyed that. And I remembered him from way back in the Joe Gagne days. But no, I thought the podcast was a great idea, and I'm glad to see that you two over the last few years have seen it through, and now we're really into the golden era of Ring of Honor. So it's been a great ride listening to each and every episode.
And I'll just say, well, thank you first of all, and I'll just say, there were probably two people that were most responsible for anyone besides like just us caring about this podcast. And Trevor, you and I are not the two people. It is one would be the Cubs fan, which I don't know if he would ever be so kind as to come on the show. But the other person is definitely Chad. Like you said, like he plucked us out of the blue and got us on the Pro Wrestling Only Podcast Network, which we're still on. And, we were so honored to be even asked. And it's, it was amazing. And I've been a big fan of Chad, of yours for a really long time. And by the way, was it 93 or 94? When did you get up to it where the Big Boys play?
Yeah. So Trevor was correct. Our last episode was the Clash of the Champions, right before Beach Blast 1993. So,
all right. Well,
it.
I'm glad I didn't bet.
I remember because I was so sad because I was like, when I started finally in my family, like when my family finally was willing to get TBS was 1994. So you were about to hit like the Trevor Dame little boy nostalgia period. And I was like, God damn, we came so close, but still so many good episodes. And obviously that's the worst time. Well, no, the first half of 94 is good WCW, but then it just basically becomes, my parents got me like I was a lifelong WWF fan, and my parents got me WCW finally right as it became a poor imitation of the WWF I had just grown up with. So that was a fun time.
Yeah, and that show was really a template for this one in a lot of ways. Besides just the show-by-show reviews, you also did you went through the Wrestling Observers and torches and stuff and talked about the current events going on surrounding the shows, which is something that obviously Trevor does a really good job doing now. I say Trevor because I really don't do any of that at all. But and by the way, had they already started the thing? Because I tweeted about this recently because I was just watching Slamboree 94 and I noticed this and it was something I remembered and it was a pet peeve of mine about WCW. When they had like this really intense brawl with Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan against the Nasty Boys, the announcers were just like laughing the whole time. They were just like, haha, this is ridiculous. These guys are too much. They already started doing that by 93 because I feel like when Jim Ross was on commentary, he did not do that. He treated the matches seriously.
Well, wasn't that like a famous complaint in Mick Foley's first biography where he was like, doing those 93 matches where he let Vader just brutalize him, and Tony Schiavone was like, that's Excedrin headache number. Like, I think Foley literally like called people out in his book for that. Like,
yeah, but it wasn't just like making like unserious comments. Like Jesse Ventura and Tony were on commentary, and they were just like straight up like cracking up. Like they were just like laughing, like it was a comedy match. Like it was crazy, and these guys were like taking like big time shots to the head.
Yeah, I think that's more of a Jesse Tony kind of their rapport thing because Raw certainly, like in the 91, 92, really the brawls that you think about do involve Foley, like versus Sting, but he took those fairly seriously. So, and really helped to get Foley over, I thought. So,
yeah.
So I think that's just Jesse and Tony. They always had like a joking back and forth. I mean, maybe it's because Jesse and Ross didn't like each other at all. So he was happy to work with Tony, but it could put a damper on some of the serious brawls for sure.
Yeah, and then later on, Dusty did the same thing. So it would be a trend until the end of WCW. But hey, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about a company that had very good commentary since the beginning, right, Trevor?
And well, that's a nice transition. We should cover today's show. That is Dragon Gate Challenge. We are dead in the middle of the Milestone series, which was a string of 7 shows. This is the 4th, so we're right in the absolute center of it. Dragon Gate Challenge took place March 30th, 2006 at the Michigan State Fairgrounds and Expo Center in Detroit, Michigan, in front of a reported crowd of 550 fans. So this was the start of Ring of Honor's, big first ever triple shot. The next 2 nights they'd be in Chicago, which was the site of that year's WrestleMania. Dave Meltzer found a way to what would end up being one of the most successful weekends of this entire era of Ring of Honor, found a way to kind of be negative on it because he wrote in the Observer at the time, the big weekend began with a hot show on March 30th in Detroit before 550 fans, which is more than they were expecting for a Thursday night show. And like Trevor, side note, yeah, that's the other thing we should mention. This, because it was a triple shot, this was a rare Thursday night Ring of Honor show. Usually they ran, Friday, Saturday. Dave continues, still, it does show a TNA versus Ring of Honor comparison, as the TNA show, with much more advertising, it should be noted, did 3,170 people paid 2 weeks earlier, and that's with TNA never even once mentioning or plugging the show on their own TV, since they sold the show and weren't going to financially benefit by any extra tickets sold. So, I mean, I don't know if the TNA show, I mean, first off, that has to be one of the higher, like, TNA's all-time record attendance, I don't think, is too much higher than that, like probably a couple thousand. But yeah, this was a time where TNA was ascendant and doing well. And yeah, there was a difference between the two companies, but this was still, $550 on a lot of nights would be a good Ring of Honor crowd during this era on a Friday or Saturday, depending on the market. And this was on a Thursday, so not bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Ring of Honor was a smaller promotion than TNA at this point. So it's like, I don't know if that's the standard you should hold it to, but like TNA had pay-per-views and weekly TV and you know what I mean? Like it's not, I don't think it's a fair comparison. Like eventually I think that in some people's minds, ROH overtook TNA as the number 2 company, but it wasn't in 2006.
Mm-hmm. And then we go to the Observer for one more quote, and I love this quote because it's, I think I mentioned this on Twitter months ago, but this is, because I couldn't hold it back even though I knew I was going to use it for this show, but it shows you, it is delightfully quaint in today's wrestling world. It shows you how much things have changed. Dave wrote, to show how crazy WrestleMania weekend will be in Chicago, this is the schedule of things going on besides the Hall of Fame, Mania, and the WrestleMania brunch WWE is putting on. Of course, Ring of Honor has shows on both March 31st and April 1st. IWA Mid-South has an afternoon show on April 1st in nearby Midlothian, Illinois. There are also rumors of a new MMA group called the IFL, which is the team versus team concept we've written about, and they're looking at April 1st in Chicago for its first TV taping. And that is it. That was what Dave thought was a crazy WrestleMania weekend, in 2006, which I guess shows you that, like, this was not the first weekend that Ring of Honor ever piggybacked on WrestleMania. This is certainly they were not the first company in wrestling history to ever run a local indie show around WrestleMania. But I feel like this was kind of the weekend maybe where after the next 2 shows in Chicago where it kind of started to really cement the idea of long more than Ring of Honor that like, hey, following WrestleMania around and kind of making this like a destination weekend and what's now become basically kind of a destination week is a good idea. It's delightfully just cute that 2 indie shows and maybe a possible MMA show back in 2006 was considered a crazy WrestleMania weekend.
Well, I mean, have you ever been to one of those WrestleMania brunches? Those things get pretty crazy. But the one notable thing about this, I think, as far as this being the beginning of the WrestleMania weekend indie tradition, this was the last WrestleMania. This was 2006. This was WrestleMania 22. This was the last WrestleMania to be held in an arena, like ever. After this, there was never another WrestleMania held in an arena. There was one WrestleMania that was held in a performance center, but there's never been a WrestleMania held in an arena after this. Every other one was held in a big stadium, which meant like many thousands more people coming into the city for these indies to piggyback off of WWE Force. So it's kind of fitting that this was a little bit smaller, a little bit more quaint than the ones that would come after it.
Yeah, it's interesting that we were also that goes hand in hand with that. I guess the idea of WrestleMania transitioning from just the biggest show we're putting on each year to kind of like this is a show so big. It's almost like the Olympics where cities are now fighting to be awarded it. There's an expectation that it will bring tourism dollars because a significant number of people will travel from around the world just to come here, which is those are the kind of audience you need to make like I think a local indie scene have a whole week around it, because to have that many people that may decide to show up a few days early, they have nothing to do, or at least nothing wrestling related to do until the day of, and places like Ring of Honor took advantage of that. And then last little note, Scott D'Amore was backstage of the show, obviously of TNA, local guy from Michigan. So that brings us to the show. There was 2 matches we did not get to see, as usual, dark matches. There was a dark 4-corner survival match where Mitch Franklin beat Bobby Dempsey, Derek Dempsey, and Smash Bradley. And then there was a rare dark tag team women's match. Lacey and Tiana Ringer defeated Allison Danger and Chantel Taylor. And that brings us to the show proper. We open, as normal for the Milestone Series, picking up where the last show ended, in this case with the embassy of Alex Shelley, Jimmy Rave, and Prince Nana arguing. Nana tries to get them to stop fighting, threatening to stop giving them money if they don't. He says all they need to worry about is winning the Ring of Honor tag team titles. and he pressures them to shake hands. After some cajoling, they do shake hands. So, Matt, this was probably like the weakest cliffhanger resolution in the Milestone series, where like the end of the last show was like for those who haven't been following, like the Milestone series as a special little difference on these shows, they had so every show would end with like kind of a to be continued cliffhanger, and the cliffhanger to this one, to the last show, was the middle of the embassy fighting, and the cliffhanger resolution is literally just they make up.
Literally all of these cliffhangers were kind of contrived and forced. Even like I'd say the most dramatic one was the one between Arena Warfare and Best in the World, with BJ Whitmer getting beaten up in the in the ECW arena, but he had already been beaten up in the ECW arena, like at the end of Arena Warfare. The beginning of Best in the World was just like Zandig cutting a promo. So I think it was cute that they tried the whole to be continued thing, but none of them were that interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then next we find Lacey and Jimmy Jacobs somewhere else backstage. Lacey tells Jimmy that this is a really important night for him because he's going to get his revenge on BJ Whitmer. Jimmy shyly asks Lacey if she went on ROHvideos.com and saw the video of the song he wrote for her, which of course is the Ballad of Lacey that we were talking about on a recent show. Lacey just ignores that. She tells Jimmy she doesn't care if he wins tonight. She just wants him to hurt Whitmer, and if he does, he might get a little reward. Jimmy asks, well, what kind of reward? And Lacey says, well, what do you want? And Jimmy says, well, could I take off your shoes and socks and give you a foot rub after the match? And then Lacey reacts with this kind of, that's all you want, really, like kind of reaction, but says, sure, if you beat up Whitmer tonight, okay. And at this point, Jimmy gets really excited, says Whitmer is a dead man tonight. So my one takeaway from this promo is Jimmy Jacobs has a lot in common with Bob Odenkirk.
The other takeaway that I have of this promo is she was right, this really was an important night for Jimmy Jacobs, but not for the reason that she said. And by the way, just something related to Jimmy Jacobs and the Ballad of Lacey. On the last show, we talked about the lyric where he was like, you're the American Beauty and I'm Kevin Spacey. And we talked about how out of date and how much that line doesn't hold up anymore. But yeah. There was a thing about a year ago where Jacobs sang the Ballad of Lacey to Lacey at an indie show. I don't remember what the show was, but he updated the lyric. He got rid of this Kevin Spacey thing and said something about Dawson's Creek and Pacey. So I think he knew how problematic the Kevin Spacey line was too.
Yeah, Kevin Spacey takes on a different connotation in 2021. So absolutely. And that brings us to the top 5. We get Samoa Joe, Alex Shelley, Christopher Daniels, Jimmy Yang, Roderick Strong, number 1. Same top 5 we've had on recent shows. And then we cut to the ring, where Bobby Cruz welcomes us to another show in the Milestone series featuring Dragon Gate in a series of matches against Ring of Honor, when Colt Cabana walks to the ring and interrupts Bobby. Colt grabs the mic and puts over how good the show is going to be, but says there's one match that can't wait any longer. Colt points out that the last time they were here, Colt superplexed Homicide through a table, and the match was not able to continue after that point. Colt says tonight the match will continue. It's going to be Falls Count Anywhere. He wants it right now. Out comes Homicide. Falls Count Anywhere matches our opener. Homicide defeats Colt Cabana via pinfall in 5 minutes, 23 seconds, after he puts Cabana's head in the middle of a closed ladder, hits it with a chair, then covers him for the pin. Chad, this is definitely one of the slightest of their matches, I would say. What do you think about, it's hard to throw this to you because it's not a ton to work with, but what did you think about this?
Yeah, so I've been listening along, but I haven't been watching along. So I don't think I'd seen this show since I first got the DVD. So I'm pretty sure it'd been 16 years since I'd watched this show. As far as, and it is weird coming into a show like this, which you said was dead in the middle of the Milestone series, and then also kind of in the middle of this huge blood feud between Colt and Homicide. But I did like the brawl for what it was. There was a couple of things that I noticed. One, given where we are in 2022, There was some chairs that were thrown in this match, and I don't think I could ever watch those in the same way again, especially if they involve somebody like Colt Cabana or Ace Steel, CM Punk, anybody of that.
Well, Chad addressed the elephant in the room. We weren't going to, but Chad did.
Well, there was that. Just, it was a little fresh in the mind when they started hurling chairs at Colt. No, I mean, as far as a brawl, it was looked out of control. It was one of those things. I think once you're kind of removed from it, you get a little desensitized. But in this kind of day and age where, there's tons of indies that are filmed on IWTV and whatnot, and generally the camera work and lighting is good enough to follow the action. It was kind of strange to go back to 2006 when they were brawling in the crowd, and it was a little tough to follow what was going on. But yeah, I mean, as far as a quick brawl, I thought it was entertaining. Some nasty shots, including the final kind of knockout blow. I thought was real brutal, and I thought it did a good job in kind of setting the stage for the remainder of the weekend for the feud, because I mean, they kind of presented it as though this was going to be the final conclusion, but the way it ended up, if you're a viewer, that's probably not going to be the case.
Matt, I want your thoughts. So also, the very end of the match, where Colt has his head sandwiched in the ladder and he gets hit with the chair. The Observer wrote after the show that Colt Cabana suffered both a broken nose and a deep bruise on his cheek after a DDT on a ladder in Detroit, but he worked the rest of the weekend. I know I was listening to our friends at an Honorable Mention, their episode on this, and when someone wrote in to ask, like, was Colt hurt on this show, Shane Hagedorn, who obviously worked the show, just said kayfabe. And I'm wondering, like, I didn't think it would seem that, like, I didn't notice any severe injury, but maybe there was. But I'm wondering if this was an example of actually Ring of Honor fooling the newsletters, as would occasionally happen. So what'd you think about the match? And did you think watching that, wow, this is ultra, like, someone just got hurt there?
No, but I think someone could easily have gotten hurt at that spot, where their head is sandwiched in a ladder. But, if Shane says it's kayfabe, I tend to believe him. So that's what I settle on.
The word kayfabe, so maybe that just means he's going to keep mum on it. Who knows? Maybe it was real, but they don't want to tell you how real, Matt. Maybe it was too real.
I'm going to take it to mean that it was not real. That's usually what kayfabe means. But as far as I agree with pretty much all of what Chad said, but I'll add, just as someone who we do watch all these shows, there's a monotony to the format of these shows, and usually when something breaks the pattern and breaks the formula, I like it. And this did that, instead of having the undercard matches starting slow, or just like a short, unimportant match, they start with this match was really just an angle, it really wasn't a match, but it was good. Like, as far as what it was a good angle, it wasn't like a good match in the sense of it's going to get a high star rating or anything, but it was exciting. It was 5 minutes. It kept the story going. It kept the crowd hot. It was the usual thing where they fight in the crowd and it's dark and the spotlight really can't find them half the time. And it played off of the last show in Detroit in, I guess it would have been, November, where they were fighting in the crowd and Homicide one of them did the suplex off the bleachers. I don't even remember which is which at this point. But they even fight on the bleachers. And then they have that big move at the end where, it is crazy when someone puts someone's head in between a ladder and hits it with a chair. That, it makes it plausible that the match would have to end right there. So, I do think it's kind of silly when they're like, okay, now the feud's over, because I've done that a few times, and obviously that's never happened. But no, I really enjoyed it. I think the other thing is everything feels so like accelerated, where it's like they have this big angle where Colt's like head is all messed up, and then they end up having this big blow off match 2 nights later. But then I was like, you know what? That's not so different than shooting an angle on SmackDown or Rampage and having the big match on the pay-per-view. So I guess that's fair enough. But no, I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I like this less than you guys. I just feel like at this point we had seen so much brutality and like lengthier, more meaty matches that this just felt kind of like a lesser kind of revisiting of things just to kind of extend this out over the course of a triple shot. And like Chad acknowledged, yeah, indies, especially back then, had a hard time following the action. There was a part of this match where I felt so bad for whoever was running the spotlight, because a lot of times when you see crowd brawling, you can see like the spotlight's just kind of behind as they move. There's like a wide, like hard camera shot during this brawl where you see like the spotlight is just like frantically darting all over everywhere. Like the guy's just going, where are they? Where are they? Like he has no idea. I just felt so bad for whoever was running it. And I did like that they, fought all the way back to the bleachers, and they kind of teased that maybe that they were going to, repeat the big move off the bleachers like they did last time there, but they didn't really do anything. The ladder thing at the end was, memorable, but overall, like you said though, Matt, I do agree that anytime you break up like the flow of a show, if you just change the format, that, you can't do it all the time, but it's refreshing when they do that. So I appreciate that. And then, after the match, Prazak in that very Gabian, I'm sure he was coached by Gabe to put it this way, kind of commentary. Hard sell said, the feud is over. Homicide has won the feud. Cabana will now never have peace. And,
I love the word Gaby. I feel like
the Gabian.
Yes.
Smokes hugs Homicide. They happily celebrate, and both of them literally are shouting like, it's over, it's over. So classic Ring of Honor ultra telegraph, like what's going to happen by acting so hard in the opposite direction. You know what's coming next. But
we should write a book on the Gabian theory of wrestling booking. or would it be the Sapolskyan theory? Which sounds better?
I was thinking Boward.
The Boward school of commentary.
Yeah.
And then next we go to Dragon Gate's Do Fixer stable of Dragon Kid, Ryo Saito, and Genki Horiguchi backstage. They take turns each saying a few words of the following sentence in English. In Japan, Do Fixer fights everyone's challenges. Tonight, we're here to fight you. So just a quick, very, that's it. That's the entire promo.
This was nothing, but I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like when AEW brings in Japanese stars, they should do something like this. Like just have them say like a sentence backstage. Like it just gets them over just like that little tiny bit more. It's tiny, but I think it's significant.
Yeah, like Takeshita should have had some more, like just a promo about how much he loves cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
That would, as well as his run in AEW was, that would take it one more level, I would say. And then we cut to Christopher Daniels and Allison Danger somewhere else backstage. Daniels says Samoa Joe has always been more trouble than he's worth. Daniels, he goes over their history in Ring of Honor, how he brought Joe in as to be the hired hitman of the Prophecy way back in 2002, only for Joe to eventually turn on him. Daniels says he has then tried to stop Joe, but at every turn, Joe has put his shoulders to the mat. Daniels says at the recent Midwest double shot, it was supposed to end between the two of them, but fate stepped in and those matches didn't happen, obviously because Joe was hurt at that time. So tonight instead is their last scheduled singles match against each other. We will go to the context of that quote later, which Daniels says is his last chance to redeem himself and earn his respect from Joe. He says he'll beat Joe tonight and earn that respect, and maybe he'll even shake his hand. I should note that during this entire promo, Allison Danger was making some great, goofy, over-the-top, shocked faces behind Daniels, unbeknownst to him.
This is the point I've been making for like the past, like, I guess it's really been a really long time, over a year, but, I guess 8 months of shows, which is that's all she does on promos anymore, is just stand behind him and make faces.
Yeah. But she'll get to do a little more tonight. But
yeah.
That brings us to Ricky Reyes defeating Chad Collier via submission in 7 minutes 9 seconds when he made them tap to the Dragon Sleeper.
Second best Chad that is involved in this show.
Very sweet, Matt. You know what, Matt? I'm proud of you right now. But Matt,
thanks.
What do you think of this match? We are in the Ricky Reyes squashes fools era, but this is the maybe a sign that was coming to an end very soon, because this was not a squash. This was actually somewhat substantial as a match.
Yeah, I have tended not to really enjoy Ricky Reyes singles matches over the past many shows that we've watched. They're generally pretty boring, and I wasn't really expecting much of this and like was paying super close attention at the beginning. Other than I noticed that Collier's hair really grew in, like he had that mohawk a few months earlier, and I think now he like went like the way other direction. He has like a mop, but I thought it looked good. But yeah, these are two guys that were not like super over, and they're both heels, and so like I feel like they had an uphill battle, but things were really well executed. And by the end of the match, the crowd was popping. Like, when Collier got his arm in like there's like like an arm bar kind of thing, and he maneuvered that into a clover leaf. Like the crowd really popped, and Reyes fought his way to the ropes, and the crowd booed, and then like Reyes avoided another clover leaf, got a 2 count with a bridge, and Reyes kicked out and turned that into the Dragon Sleeper. And after a struggle, Collier tapped, and the crowd was like reacting to all that, which I really didn't expect. And I feel like if you can get a crowd that didn't care about you to pop for your finishing sequence, like you did a pretty good job at the very least. So I don't think this was a particularly good match, but it was definitely better than I expected. I would say it was pretty solid for the time that it got and its placement on the card. Like nothing that I'll remember, but better than I expected.
Chad, you're like one of the most like well-versed wrestling fans I know, so I'm going to do the horrible thing and just assume you've seen all wrestling. But on this show, we've always been kind of I think a lot of people were not huge fans of the Havana Pitbulls, although I'm lower on that than that was in Ring of Honor. And, this Ricky Reyes thing, I don't think we're out on a limb saying it was not, it mostly underwhelmed us, barring this match. I haven't seen much of any like Havana. Obviously, I've seen a bunch of Rocky Romero, but Havana Pitbull stuff or Ricky Reyes solo stuff out of Ring of Honor. Have you seen it? Like, because I remember they came into Ring of Honor with such like a lot of hype, and there is a history in Ring of Honor of teams that just or acts that just for some reason they didn't click in Ring of Honor, but they clicked everywhere else. Do you have any opinions on Ricky Reyes? That's a huge assumption I'm making, Matt. Chad. And what do you think about this match?
Yeah, so I know they had, in my memory of the Havana Pitbulls leading into Ring of Honor, I would say there was a very vocal minority that was really into them. The stuff I'd seen of them up to their debut, I hadn't been overly impressed with. The other singles, Ricky Reyes stuff I've seen, like around like IWA Mid-South, he was in like a TPI. It's fine, but nothing extraordinary. So yeah, I've been pretty aligned in my memory with you guys' comments on the matches themselves. Now this match, when I saw it flip on the screen, I was like, oh boy. But much like Matt, I was, I guess, pleasantly surprised. And I agree with his sentiment that while, it probably actually topped out as like borderline good on like a star rating metric, it actually overexceeded my expectations. Now at the beginning, I think it was Lenny Leonard that said like, this is going to be a great technical contest. And I don't think it was a very technical match at all. Like they did chain wrestling for about the first minute and then kind of went off of that. But there was some kind of solid psychology in the neck being worked over of Collier to set up the Dragon Sleeper. And like Matt mentioned, when Collier does transition to the Cloverleaf, I was shocked at the reaction of the crowd. Like they were definitely into it for what was this kind of, certainly lower card match on the entire card. They do get over, I think, the Dragon Sleeper is being well built as kind of a deadly finisher. But, if the finisher is put over, but the wrestler and character behind it isn't that interesting, then it kind of tops out. But as far as the segment, this was something that, when I think about this show as a whole and think about like when I go through my chronological watch of 2006, like this would be a very easy match to just outright skip if you saw it on a match listing. And while I don't think it's essential, and I think you could rest easy at night if you never see this match, if you're just coming in blind and want to watch 2006 as a whole. I think you would kind of enjoy it if you watch it. And like I said, it over exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, good news is I completely agree with you too. Bad news is you guys covered basically everything I had in my personal notes for this. You guys basically said almost word for word at some points. Yeah, Matt, I agree. I was shocked at how over that spot near the end where near the end where Collier reverses like a triangle armbar into the Texas Cloverleaf Clover. I was surprised how badly this crowd popped for the idea that Collier could pull this one out. And yeah, I agree with you, Chad, that it probably tops out at strong above average, maybe bordering on good, but that was a shock for me. And I think Collier had a lot to do with it. I think, like you were saying, they were selling that it's gonna be a technical wrestling match, and it really wasn't. Collier, this wasn't about as fast, Collier can do, he's fairly well rounded, but this was him really not doing much mat stuff. This was him throwing nice drop kicks, a couple nice German suplexes, breaking out the Gato clutch. He was doing a much more fast paced match, more enjoyable than you would think, not something you need to go out and see. We return backstage again for a promo with the other faction from Dragon Gate that is here at the Triple Shot. That would be Blood Generation, consisting of Shima, Masato Yoshino, and Naruki Doi. Shima says, "Hey, Generation Next, I don't speak English much. To me, next means second." And then Shima asks, who is number one? His stablemates tell him in Japanese, and Shima says, Blood Generation is number one. And then he screams. So, more personality than Do Fixer.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also, I'm very happy that I finally have the opportunity on this podcast to bring back my joke that I made a few years ago on a podcast with Alan Farrell when he talked about Naruki Doi, where that name sounds to me like just a silly way of saying nice day, have a Naruki Doi. So I would do that if I talked more often to people that would get that reference, but I don't. So I'm just going to say it at the end. I'm just going to say it at the end of this podcast, just warning everybody right now.
Thank you for the warning.
Yes.
But, we cut to Samoa Joe backstage. Boy, a lot of backstage promos so far on this show. My God. Cut to Samoa Joe also backstage. Joe says tonight Christopher Daniels steps in the ring one more time with a man he's never had a chance of beating, a man who hates him more than anyone else here. Tonight the result will be the same, but tonight when all is said and done, Daniels will shake Joe's hand whether he he likes it or not. So I like how both guys tease that they're going to win and there's going to be a handshake. I guess, this is part of building that idea of, Daniels is he's going to shake a hand soon, folks, but we still don't get it tonight due to some happenings. But, pardon me, that brings us to probably the most famous, well, definitely not probably, I would say definitely the most famous match on this show. BJ Whitmer defeats Jimmy Jacobs with Lacey via pinfall in 15 minutes, 14 seconds after he hits a lariat. So, before the match, this is kind of a milestone where this is the first time the Ballad of Lacey is now used as Jimmy Jacobs' personal ring entrance theme. And I guess showing the power of things starting to air on ROHvideos.com and YouTube, a couple of fans immediately pop and clap for the first notes of it, despite the fact that show can't have possibly been released on DVD yet. But they, a few, no, I would say not even close to the majority, but a few fans recognize it. Jacob spends almost his entire entrance waving his hand over his head like he's holding a lighter or a cell phone, which, the fans were not responding in kind, but they would pick up on his cue very shortly. He sings along to the Match of the Year part of his theme and shouts that he and Lacey are, in fact, the Match of the Year. And then as BJ enters the ring, we are shown a bad video quality clip of him attacking Jimmy Jacobs in an outdoor ring in a parking lot on a Fox 2 news segment, which this seemed like something that Ray Var was doing not, once in a while, whenever they had a chance on a local Fox affiliate to set up a ring outdoor somewhere and have a few rushers take bumps to promote the show. And it is most notable to me for, Whitmer attacks Jacobs, and Jimmy Yang is just in the ring watching, not doing anything, which kind of sums up his Ring of Honor run. Prazak, again, later says, hey, that took place on Fox's morning show. So, Yeah, this was the match that was, the first big Ring of Honor match between Whitmer and Jacobs, which would become kind of a big indie feud. We could talk about the match itself. I can certainly have notes on that, but this match is really remembered for one thing, which is an insanely botched powerbomb spot where deep into the match, Whitmer looks to powerbomb Jimmy Jacobs off the top rope, but he slips, and I think as the honorable mention guys describe it as, there was like something that covers part of like the turnbuckle area that just kind of slipped under Whitmer's foot. He starts to fall backwards, not the direction you want when you are standing on the top rope holding another human being. And what happens is Whitmer basically tries to push Jacobs as forward as much as he can as he's falling, trying to get him into the ring. And what happens is Whitmer basically falls backwards straight down from the top turnbuckle to the floor. He ends up, I believe, breaking his ankle. Jacobs, meanwhile, his head hits one of the ropes and then the apron on the way down. I believe he got, at the very least, whiplash from that, and a possible concussion. It's a miracle they walked away from it. We see multiple instant replays, which is a rarity for Ring of Honor. You hear the reaction of the crowd, which is an initial like, oh my God, this is cool, followed like a half second later to an, oh my God, like, did someone just die? You even hear like a couple high-pitched screams of terror from fans in the crowd. It is amazing they walked away from it. And not only did they walk away from it, they wrestled for another 2 to 3 minutes, including a finish that sees Jacobs take a belly-to-belly superplex and a huge lariat for the finish. It's one of those weird moments that happens in wrestling where guys are probably selling real injuries less than they're actually probably feeling them, like because they have more wrestling to do. Like, it's clear right after the bump that Whitmer has hurt his ankle, but it's not until immediately after the finish of the match where he like urgently unties his boot and really starts checking on it. Before then, he's got a fake fight to go through. And likewise, like less than a minute after that huge botch, Jacobs is kicking out of a move and then almost immediately back on offense in transition, hitting the contra code for a near fall. So, we can get to I have other thoughts on the match, but I guess, Chad, like, I think this is one of the scariest botches I've ever seen in wrestling that people have walked away from, basically. Like, we've seen tragedies in wrestling rings, but off the top of my head, I can't think of many spots where like it was this scary that the guys came out relatively unscathed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrifying spot. It looks, it's one of those things where you've seen it so many times that you may think you may be a little desensitized to it, but I was not when it came up and it happened when I rewatched the match. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think it leads to an overall discussion. That we know they did have legitimate injuries, but like you said, they both kind of walked away from it with not career altering injuries. It's one of those interesting things, and a lot of kind of it's one of those things I don't quite know where I stand, both from like a humility standpoint and from a fan standpoint. I kind of liken it to something that was career altering, and that's Shibata versus Okada, and him kind of continuing that match even to the end when, he was near death actually. But in this case, it's a terrible botch. I would say it's awful what happened with Whitmer falling straight back, but really Jacobs' neck hitting the apron as violent as it does. I think that's where you can really see that. I don't know if there's any other way to say it than he just got lucky.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to say, because I mean his neck completely hits the hardest part of the ring, as we're told a million times, pretty full force. He had no way to kind of brace himself, and he's really lucky that it was only whiplash if that was his injury, which is tough to say, but true.
Matt, do you have any memories of this at the time? Like, I mean, I know you weren't here, but like, I mean, it is still crazy to rewatch this all these years later, and to it's crazy to think if this happened in today's wrestling, they stop the match probably, right?
You'd hope.
Yeah.
I
A lot
think
of
so.
promotions.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think and you'd hope. I guess you can't say for sure, but I'd like to think that they would. My memory. I mean, I remember hearing about it. I think I remember when I finally saw it. It was crazier than I expected, and I remember like being blown away that they kept the match going and like that the match was still dramatic after that. Like I couldn't believe it. And obviously they play off this spot a few times in subsequent matches, but yeah, it's funny because you mentioned like this, it wasn't career altering, but the funny thing is for Jacobs, it kind of was, but like in the opposite way of what you'd expect. When you combine this with the new character and the Ballad of Lacey, I think this greatly helped his career. Like this performance, I think probably gave, promoters and probably Gabe specifically a lot of faith in him to get over and to, be reliable. And, when you just combine everything, I feel like I'm sure, like if you asked Jimmy Jacobs, you'd probably say like this match was part of a big turning point for him in a positive way, as horrifying as that is to say. So it's kind of ironic in that way.
Yeah, and I thought the match itself, it's hard for me to judge because to me that bump kind of overshadows everything, but I think it was a pretty good, on its way to being a pretty good match.
I think it was kind of like really good in some ways. Like the crowd was already like getting into it even before that, but then after that they were just like way into it for obvious reasons because they didn't expect him to kick out.
I think both guys, but especially Jacobs, you really saw he's really going for it because we talked on recent shows about this was a part of his career where if it wasn't for but until the Ballad of Lacey and probably stuff like this, it sounded like Gabe was about to phase him out probably after this match. And you can tell like Jacobs is taking these big flip bumps when he's getting whipped into the guardrail. They do a crazy intentional spot where Whitmer like lifts Jacobs up for a suplex. Jacob starts wiggling his legs in the air, and then they both fall over the top rope from that position, which is terrifying and intentional. There's some fun stuff with like, I like there was a part where BJ like had Jacobs in like a tombstone position and then lifts him up from that position into like a snake eyes. I thought it was they were going pretty hard, and apparently, and normally I like to have better sources than this, but according to Grizz632 from a 16-year-old post on the MMA Underground message board,
nice.
He wrote, I talked with Whitmer the night after the match happened. Apparently Jacobs was supposed to reverse the power bomb into a Rana, but the turnbuckle shifted under Whitmer's foot before they could pull it off. Scary stuff. So that actually wasn't even supposed to be a power bomb. It was supposed to be actually Jacobs turning it into a Rana, if this fan is to be believed.
No, but you know what? Like even before, the great Grizz 632 confirmed that, and I know Trevor, you would never go based on hearsay, so you actually called Grizz last night and got the confirmation. Yeah. But I remember last year when we saw Jacobs do that in a match. I guess it was last year, like in the real time. It was probably like 2 years ago in our actual lives, but and I remember thinking like, oh, that's probably what they were planning to do in the match with when Jacobs fell. So that was my hunch. I didn't know for sure, but it makes sense because it kind of like it changes the way that you balance yourself. When Whitmer is like preparing to like flip forward, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that would be the spot they were going for.
Yeah, instead of just stepping forward, he now has to kind of really brace himself to like launch off the top rope. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, yeah, he takes that step, his foot slips underneath something, and now everything's going wrong. But yeah, and then I guess the last thing to talk about in the match is just that, they wrestle, as I mentioned earlier, for like another couple minutes. Like they do near falls. And there's a spot they do a whole thing where Jenny Jacobs hits the Contra code, and the announcers kind of sell like he could win the match right here, but he does not go for the cover because Lacey tells him like, I don't care about you winning. I want you to hurt him more. And he puts BJ on a table outside the ring. He teases that he's going to do a senton off the top through the table, but BJ fights back, gets back in the ring, and they go to the finish and BJ wins. But Yeah, it is. It is crazy again to watch this, to see guys knowing that BJ has like legit really screwed up his ankle, knowing that Jimmy Jacobs is probably lucky to be alive. To see these, like that's the part where, on paper those last 2 minutes are exciting, but I had a hard time almost focusing because I viewed everything from the lens of like, oh my god, you guys are still doing stuff.
I had forgotten that BJ's injury was as bad as it was too until you just said that because, I remember 2006. BJ is in a big match in a 100th show just like less than a month after this. And, he has a really big run as far as the CZW feud. This is actually a hell of a year for BJ overall. I mean, he starts the year with that Samoa Joe match, which I liked a lot. This match is extremely memorable. He has a lot of really memorable angles with CZW and a couple of really great matches too that, we're going to get to later on. BJ's 2006, I would say, is pretty underrated. And for Jacobs, this is like the match that turns him into something where it's like, oh, he could be placed in these serious heavy-duty matches that people care about, to the point where I'd say at the end of this Whitmer and Jacobs feud a year later, they have one of my favorite matches in ROH history. So this is a big moment, this match, for all sorts of reasons, good and bad. That's mostly bad, but some good.
Chad, do you have any other thoughts about the match in general, apart from the crazy moment?
Yeah, so I kind of was wondering where the discussion would go, but I guess my kind of hot take on the match itself, with the way it was, like hypothetically you would think the match would be stopped, but it didn't. And I think, unequivocally for the live crowd, them continuing the match added a lot of drama.
Yeah.
Once they get back in, there's a lot of high drama, and I really got into the storyline of the match, and I was into it when it happened. These are two I wouldn't have thought would be a great pairing against each other, but I do think they had great chemistry with each other throughout the years. But this felt like a lot of things coming to a head where, like Jimmy's in this emotional kind of angle with Lacey, and she's demanding he go for more violence instead of the outright win. So that's going on. Then you also have kind of a little bit of a big brother, little brother dynamic with BJ and Jimmy together. And then also like the fact that, BJ was so embroiled in this CCW feud that you could tell like he was a little unhinged in this match, or, maybe a little more violent, a little more aggressive than he normally would, because he was on edge because of that kind of animosity that was swirling around. So as a result, like as a match, the way it was presented, spot and all, like this is in contention as my match of the night, actually. Like I do think this is, as presented, a great match that goes a long way in presenting both of them. And just from execution wise, even before the botch, had a lot of intensity and violence and neat narratives that played along into the match overall.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And yeah, man, it's interesting to think like this was simultaneously maybe like the most over. We were entering the period of like the most over period of BJ Whitmer's Ring of Honor career, and that's probably played a big factor of why he worked through an injury that probably a lot of guys would say, you know what, maybe I should take a few months off, because like the Dave Meltzer and the Observer even wrote after the show, Whitmer's ankle was really hurting the rest of the weekend, and he's getting it checked out this week. It was an ankle he's had surgery on previously. So, like, not just did he, like, break or something. I think he broke it. I think it's broken, this ankle. It's an ankle he had already previously had to have surgically repaired. And just the fact that
can you go that long on a broken ankle? Because he really didn't take almost any time off.
I guess it depends if it was, like, a hairline crack or who knows. But, like, I mean, yeah, maybe they altered, like, cards on the next two nights of the double shot to kind of accommodate. Yeah. But it's amazing, like, if we go right after the match, Gabe Sapolsky walks to ringside. We can see Gabe Sapolsky walk to ringside, and you can clearly hear Whitmer telling Gabe, like, immediately, he, quote, "my ankle's fucked." Like, he just tells him, like, and I don't know if, Gabe was just honestly concerned, or especially knowing that BJ's booked for, like, multiple segments. Like, he has to do something immediately after the match and later in the night, so he's probably wondering, like, oh, Jesus Christ, like, is Whitmer even going to be able to walk to, back out here? And so, yeah, after the match, even with it clearly causing him pain, Whitmer forces himself to pose on multiple second rope turnbuckles. Like, he's going to get his pop, even if his ankle is broken. He gets BJ chants. He waits for Jacobs to get to his feet. The crowd gives them a standing ovation, which, Ring of Honor fans did not always do at this time. So they clearly appreciated everything. BJ holds out his hand for a handshake. Jacobs looks to Lacey for approval. The crowd does a loud shake his hand chant. Jacobs leaves without shaking a hand. As Jacobs and Lacey leave, though, Whitmer grabs the mic. He asks Jimmy, is he really not going to shake my hand after what we just did together? BJ then calls Lacey a skanky piece of ass. Jacobs goes back to the ring apron, offers his hand, and when BJ walks up to Jacobs to shake his hand, Jimmy spits on his face, walks away. Jimmy and Lacey leave, and BJ gets over that. He transitions to cutting a promo about what happened to him at the Arena Warfare show in the ECW arena. Whitmer says, rumor has it Chris Hero and Necro Butcher are somewhere in this building, but he tells those, quote, two pussies to get their, quote, fucking asses out here. They don't. BJ says, don't think he's not watching what happens for the rest of the night. So, yeah, BJ kind of at the center of this show, and now he has to hobble back out later for a second at the main event because with his poor broken ankle. I felt bad for him. And that brings us to Challenge Series 1. So one of the big selling points of this show was that Dragon Gate would be fighting Ring of Honor in a best-of-3 Challenge Series. This was the first match. Ryo Saito defeated Jimmy Yang via pinfall in 11 minutes, 53 seconds with the Premium Bridge Dragon Suplex. Chad, Dragon Gate, a lot of people love it, but it was also somewhat divisive. What were your opinions about Dragon Gate, I guess, now and at the time, and what'd you think about the match? Because, for some people this was like, oh man, Dragon Gate is the future of wrestling, and for some people it was like, it's a little like having pure squishy syrup, and it's a little too strong and too undiluted for me.
Yeah, I always feel like with some of the Dragon Gate Toryumon discussions, I kind of have to be the good cop on Pro Wrestling Only because it's pretty maligned over there, and just kind of to do a blanket statement, or was. But I mean, I've always enjoyed it. I've thought it has some tendencies that can be off-putting, such as excessive interference and whatnot. But one thing I've really enjoyed is kind of the long-term storytelling, the core group of characters, and then the multi-man matches. Now, prefacing by saying all that, one guy I do know I'm lower on kind of overall in general than some of the bigger Dragon Gate fans, such as like Alan or Case Lowe, is Ryo Saito. He's somebody I've always liked, but never really loved. And as a result, with this match, and Jimmy Yang kind of fits into that grouping as well. So this was kind of the match I actually thought I would get with the Ricky Reyes Chad Collier match. I just thought this was it was solid, but to me it felt disjointed, not a lot of focus, in and out. I didn't get a sense of a whole lot of drama. I know Jimmy Yang is, what was he ranked, like number 2 or something inexplicably in the top 5, and he has a token title defense coming up in about a month. But he was someone that I always felt like kind of they kept trying to build up with his run in Ring of Honor to be more important or have more, I guess, credibility than he necessarily projected in his matches. And I felt that was the case here. I mean, I felt this was an easy kind of victory for Saito to get, and overall, I thought the match was just there and pretty disjointed.
Yeah, I thought this was just a little bit above average. Jimmy Yang continues to not click in Ring of Honor. I thought Saito was the star of this match. His offense, was well executed. I liked his cool Fisherman's Express, for those who don't know, which is like a rolling fisherman suplexes into a fisherman's buster. He added a little humor at one point. He did some test of strength fake outs where like Yang wants a test of strength. Rio would put his hand by the mat instead, or then at one point he offered his foot for a test of strength, which I thought was funny. He blisters Yang's chest with some chops, but overall this, didn't, like you said, I think disjointed's a good word to put for it. I think Yang, it's his usual big roundhouse kicks that are in the same spots in his matches that they always are in, the same mid-match random submission move that always seems to be in his matches that doesn't really lead to much. There's a kind of a weird moment or outright botch where Yang goes for Yang time off the top rope, and Saito looks like he thinks that I'm supposed to roll out of the way. And so he rolls most of the way, and Yang barely gets him. But then Yang goes for the cover, and they have it be a near fall. So clearly Yang thought that was supposed to hit, and Saito seemed to think it wasn't supposed to hit, but they kind of just met in the middle in a bad way. Yeah, and weird, like Yang wrestles this match almost like a heel for no reason. Like early on in the match, they have like a corner break and he slaps Saito in the face for no reason. When Yang gets control of the match in the middle where you're like, oh, all right, he's going to start like getting to show off some stuff and win the crowd over to his side, that's when he decides to slow the match down. Just a weird performance, like not terrible, but kind of par for the Yang course, I would say. Matt, what did you think?
Now, this is one of the rare matches where you didn't like it that much, and I liked it even less.
Wow.
No, I mean, I don't think it was, like, terrible, like, because, they're competent wrestlers and stuff, but I thought it was disappointing, and I thought probably the low light of the night. Yes, it was disjointed. Yes, there was awkwardness, but I think, like, its biggest sin was that it was just really boring. Like, it just didn't move, it didn't move me at all. And, you think of these Dragon Gate matches, and I think the other matches will bear this out, but that they're fast paced, like they have go at an accelerated pace, and this match was slow. And, you could tell, like, not, Saito, he wasn't there to be like, okay, let me show everybody what Dragon Gate can do in this match. Like he was sort of working the American style rather than bringing the Dragon Gate style, which the other matches later would do. I mean, I guess that was probably his thinking, right? Like the other matches will do Dragon Gate, I'll do America. And, I think that might have bent a mistake because this match wasn't that great. Execution-wise, they're both pros, but even on that level, I don't think it was particularly good, especially like you said, disjointed. The final few spots were kind of awkward. There was that botch on that you mentioned. In fact, to me, the most entertaining part of the match was that someone in the crowd yelled, "It's still real to me, damn it," because that reminded me that reference was new in 2006. But and by the way, as far as you mentioned, like Trevor, some people think that the Dragon Gate style was, the future, and other people don't like it. I mean, how could you argue that it wasn't the future and having just watched the AEW Trios title tournament? How could you watch those matches and not think that they were influenced by mid-2000s Dragon Gate?
Well, I guess it could be both. Like, I think some people thought it was future, and some people were scared it was going to be the future. Maybe would be the way to put it. I mean, I think it's undeniable that. In fact, that's a note I have for another match. I think it's undeniable. It really hit me watching this. What an influence it's had. For me, the most entertaining part of this match came after the match, because after the match, two random fans throw streamers. You gotta love when just one or two fans see fit to throw a streamer in the ring. And Saito grabs one of the streamers and he wipes his brow with it and then stuffs it down his trunks. Then Yang sees that, he grabs the other streamer and stuffs it down his trunk.
Yeah, is that like a Dragon Gate tradition that I just don't know about? Like, it was very strange.
I don't think so.
Not just down his trunk, like in their crotches.
Look, the streamers, in today's world, you can't turn down you can't look a good gift streamer in the mouth. You gotta take whatever you can. But
are those streamers in your pants, or are you just happy to see me?
So that brings
Should I edit that out, Trevor?
Matt, come on, that's perfectly fine. That brings us to the embassy of Alex Shelley and Jimmy Ray, with Prince Nana in their corner, defeating Bryan Danielson and Delirious in 20 minutes, 56 seconds when Shelley pinned Delirious after he hit the slice spread number 2. So the story going into this match was kind of continuing the Embassy Bryan Danielson feud, which you would have thought would have been over by now. But the gimmick going into this match, I guess, was before the show, Danielson said, like, I can beat you guys with any partner in the world. You can pick whoever for me. So they picked Delirious, who at this point had not really won in Ring of Honor yet. So this match kind of doing some lifting on a few things. It's kind of continuing the Danielson Embassy feud, even though that's mostly over. It's giving Shelley and Rave a win as they kind of start their tag push. And it's continuing this kind of a story that will continue throughout the triple shot of Delirious needs to start getting a win soon. He's popular with the fans, but he's not getting the wins. Matt, lengthy match, almost 21 minutes. What'd you think about it?
Yeah, this is one of those matches where we've talked about this before, where it's like, and a lot of times you get this in a Danielson match where it's not like a top-level Danielson singles match. It's house show style. They take their time, and it's all about character work. They're not trying to steal the show. And in that sense, I liked it. Like, I thought it was, these guys were having fun and, being their characters. This is, Delirious's chance to work with the, some of the bigger stars in the company, so to speak. And I think he did a good job. He was really like a focal point of the match. Really, Danielson kind of took a step back in a lot of cases. You really didn't feel like, oh, this is the biggest star in the company, Bryan Danielson. He sort of was, not that he took the night off or anything, but he did, I think, allow other people to shine in this match more than himself. Delirious in particular. There was, when they were coming out, it looked like it was a person in the crowd that had a Ghana flag. And so they actually used it in the match. Like, Rave put the flag over Delirious's head. At one point, Delirious put the flag in his mouth, and there was an "Eat It" chant. And, just in a post-pandemic world, I was just thinking, this is really ill-advised. You do really have no idea where that flag has been if it's coming from just some random person in the crowd. But I think most people are just not as germophobic as I am. So I think that's fair. But, when Danielson comes in, he's sort, he's mostly a babyface here, not completely, but mostly, and sometimes you don't know which Danielson you're going to get, but, he starts to dismantle Shelley, technically speaking, and then they do a fun spot where Delirious does an airplane spin, but it's short, so Danielson's like, that's not how you do it, and he does his own to Jimmy Rave, and it is, in fact, better. And then and Delirious, like, while Danielson is spinning with Rave, Delirious just runs around them in a circle, and Delirious falls down dizzy even before Danielson is done spinning. So almost like Delirious is literally like a dog, where, like, if you have like a playful dog and you start, like, spinning around, the dog will start just, like, running around and being crazy. And that's basically what Delirious is doing. And then when Danielson stops, he yells, "Now that's an airplane spin." By the way, I'm going to refer to Danielson and Delirious as D&D for the rest of this, which I think the announcers actually mentioned at one point too, but I thought I thought of it independently, just so you know. Their names both start with D, so that's why I thought of it. But as things start to pick up, Gabe jumps onto commentary, which, I'm still just like, is this character fired or isn't he? I don't know. But he announces that the Embassy will wrestle Yang and Claudio the next night in Chicago. They're really making last-minute decisions here. But I guess that's fine. But yeah, at one point, Danielson goes out to chase Nana, and that allows Shelley to kick him and send him into the guardrail. So at that point, the Embassy takes over. Things slow down, and that's when the Embassy gets to have their fun. There's a fun moment where Danielson is crawling toward the corner while Shelley pulls his leg away from the corner. Danielson yells at Delirious, "Pull the tag rope!" You really don't see too many guys think to do that. Like, he's telling their partner to grab the tag rope. He tries to do, like Danielson does, like a wacky evasion of a double clothesline where he backflips over both guys' arms, but it doesn't totally work. But I was like, you know what? That's novel and fun, so I like that. So I'm trying to think. Yeah. Then it gets a little bit more hot toward the end, where Rave avoids Shadows over Hell. Shelley super kicks Delirious right in the face. Delirious avoids the slice spread number 2, and Danielson hits Shelley with a really brilliantly timed missile drop kick. Like, just the timing on that spot was really impressive. but I guess everything Danielson was doing at this point was pretty impressive. Gets Raven the cattle mutilation, while Delirious gets Shelley in a cattle mutilation simultaneously. And Danielson isn't legal, so he has to break the hold, and he does a tope onto Rave on the floor. And Shelley starts kicking Delirious, hits a drop kick. Delirious comes back with some kicks. And then Hayes at one point gets on the apron, but then jumps off and then comes back on. So I think she just realized that, like, she was too early for the spot. That was my read on it. But second time she's on the apron, Shelley low blows Delirious and hits a slice bread number 2, and Rave spears Danielson while Shelley pins Delirious. The one thing that's a pet peeve of mine in ROH is when they do the thing where someone distracts the ref so someone can hit a low blow. The reason that annoys me is just because the refs don't disqualify you for doing it in front of their faces. So why are you wasting all this time doing the distraction? But other than that, I had a very good time watching this.
Matt, I think that was a great review. I think the highlight, though, was you saying, like, you don't know where that flag has been, because I started thinking, well, generally, don't you know where most flags have been? Like, I can think of 2 places most flags usually have been, but I just think you don't know where that flag has been is like a great phrase that will be stuck in my mind for a while now.
But you get what I'm saying, right? It's like it was brought by a random guy. Like, what was he doing? Like, maybe he was sitting on it while completely naked. You know, that's what I like to imagine he was doing anyway.
Chad, you know, what do you think about this match? I mean, again, like, lengthy match, and but clearly not one of the selling points of the show in terms of not a huge marquee match, not high on the card.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting match to watch. Me kind of parachuting in, reviewing this show, because I generally think with 2006 Ring of Honor, I mean, one of the first things you think of is Bryan Danielson, and this isn't kind of one of his, you know, marquee kind of spots. I think I may have liked it a little bit less than Matt. I thought it was good. But I did think it was kind of more of a tale of 2 matches. I actually liked the back half quite a bit once they started working over Danielson. I was wondering if this is kind of one of the last times for a while he'll be kind of in the babyface role and the face in peril, have that type of segment. It was interesting to watch. In the first half, he still did a few cocky things. He does, you know, I up to 5 and whatnot, and he's not totally receptive to Delirious as his partner. They have kind of a few odd couple moments and spots. But yeah, I mean, in the first half of the match, I did like the airplane spot, and then the later half, I did like the dual cattle mutilations. But I thought the first half sort of dragged on a little bit with the comedy for Delirious, and I did like the back half much better. I thought at the end, with the Embassy getting the win and sort of neutralizing Danielson and then pinning Delirious, I like that. I think it shows their progression. I do in some ways question now, it's like, oh, they're facing Claudio and Yang on the next show, because it feels like this win is more impressive than that win hypothetically would be. But I could see how, like, this win gets over that, you know, like, if you're a good tag team, you can beat the top single star in a tag match at any given point, which is a theory I like and I think is underutilized kind of historically in wrestling. So I do think this was good. I wouldn't necessarily call it disappointing, just because I think, like, with the spot it was on the show, it wasn't supposed to be one of the focal points, but it lived up to that. I mean, it just met its expectation for me.
Yeah, the word I use to describe this match is pleasant. Like, I agree. I think I'm kind of at the level you were, Chad. Where, like, it's good. It's nothing particularly great, you know. And like Matt said, it does have that house show vibe. It's a lot more character based, a lot more humor. But, you know, you think about, this was a triple shot. Danielson had 2 big matches come up. He goes almost an hour with Roderick Strong the next night. And then after that, he has Lance Storm in a big match. So you can see him maybe wanting to take some time. Take it a little more of a backseat here, you know, and cede some of the attention to Delirious and make it more about him. And Yeah, it is kind of like a house show match for better and worse. So I feel like this is a match where if it's your expectations, if you come in kind of we talk about this a lot through the years, like a lot of these matches, if you come in expecting a certain thing just based on paper, sometimes depending on the era, you're going to be let down. But if you kind of know that sometimes guys wrestle to their position, on a card, then I think you're going to get right probably the level you expect and enjoy it decently. I did like, I always love Alex Shelley in this era as kind of like the goofball heel. He always has these little asides, and there was one moment I love where Danielson's going for the surfboard, I think, on Rave, and Alex Shelley screams, "Jimmy, he likes this move," like as if somehow that will help Jimmy Rave. What's he gonna do with that information? And then later, when Danielson does get to do it, like Shelley's making the sign of the cross. Stuff like that. There is what I think is a botch, apparently, that was so bad they had to edit it off the show, because there's a moment where it looks like Hayes attacks Bryan Danielson on the outside, but the editing goes out of their way to miss the spot. You can tell it happens, but the camera doesn't show it. And then immediately you can hear the crowd chanting, "You fucked up," at her. And Daisy says to someone in the crowd, "He fucked up." So whatever it was deemed so bad that even Ring of Honor went out of their way to edit it out. But no matter, still decent match. Next, we are outside where Dave Prazak is asking Colt Cabana if he's sure he wants to cut a promo right now. Colt is sure. I want to point out at this point, we can only tell it's Colt from his voice because it is so dark outside, and the way the light is hitting him, Colt's body is illuminated, but his face is in total blackness.
Do you think in this case they have an excuse for it being so dark because Colt wants to be away from the noise and the lights, so he went to do it outside? Do you think that's a suitable excuse, or do you think it's just ROH being ROH?
I mean, that's the excuse they give. I wrote in my notes, Colt looks like a guy doing an interview not about Homicide the wrestler, but someone in witness protection doing an interview about Homicide the crime. That's what I wrote. Prazak says Colt requested to do the promo outside, away from everything. Again, to Matt's point, that the sound and stuff's going to bug him because he's concussed. Colt says it's a bit muggy inside. He wanted to be away from everything. Colt starts to cut a promo, saying that this is the thing needs to come to an end before he grabs his head in pain. Colt says he'll do it over, but Prazak tells him, you may have a concussion. You really need to see a doctor. And then Gabe's voice, we can hear from behind the camera saying, "That was fine." That's enough. And again, that's another kind of thing we probably would not see in wrestling today, where guys are basically openly talking, selling concussions and being, how valiant it is to fight through a concussion, where nowadays that's the kind of
did you remember Danielson versus Garcia from 2 months ago?
Okay, but that's faking a concussion.
Yeah.
But this is valiantly fighting through. Okay, maybe. You know what? Danielson keeping it alive. Man. You ruined it. Okay, fine.
I did. That's what I do.
That brings us to the first match back from intermission. Claudio Castagnoli defeated Shane Hagedorn via pinfall in 4 minutes, 1 second after he hit the Apamari water slide. This was another one of those squash matches that we were talking about in recent shows that were being taped in this era for ROHvideos.com that they were just also throwing on the DVDs proper. I will say, if the purpose of this match was to showcase Claudio and make him look good, Hagedorn actually probably got too much offense.
Yeah, it wasn't a squash because, Hagedorn got most of the offense.
Yeah, Claudio gave him at least half of this match, I would say. I mean, he still beats him cleanly in 4 minutes flat, so in that sense it's a squash, but it bordered on feeling like he was given, considering that the Ring of Honor rookies up to this point had been treated very shabbily, it was kind of a shock to see a guy on the ascent give a rookie that much. I don't remember if this is the first time we see Hagedorn as a heel on a main card or not. But
No, definitely wasn't the first time.
But when he comes out, it was like he was trying to jam as much heelness per second as possible into his act. From his very moment of his entrance, he's jaw-jacking with the fans. He's finding moments to pose after a move. He's asking Bobby Cruz if he wants to do the honor of taking his robe off. He's already overflowing with that smugness, and he's already comfortable interacting with fans mid-match, which I feel like a lot of rookies can only focus on hitting their moves because it's so overwhelming when you're learning wrestling, that the idea that any rookie always impresses me when they can find moments to stop in the middle of working to, play off the crowd. And there's a who are you chant for Hagedorn, but you're a douchebag chant. Hagedorn does a bit of comedy where he tries to kip up, but he can't. But this whole review, it all builds to this one moment. This was the one moment I loved. A fan asks Hagedorn, who cut your hair? Because Hagedorn has a different choice of a haircut here. And Hagedorn's reply is, your grandma. It's one of those lines where if you sit down to actually think about, like, is that really a burn? Like it's not like, oh, I slept with your mother last night. Like, who cut your hair? Your grandma cut my hair. Okay. Like, I just love those kind of moments. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but
that's a compliment to the grandma. She's got style.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on, a pretty short match, but.
Yeah. I mean, I was always impressed with how quickly Hagedorn took to the heel role and like leaned into it. I think he was pretty natural at that. I don't mean like naturally unlikable, but I mean like he was very unnatural in terms of like he kind of knew the little things to do and the big things to do. And you could tell like there were little things where it was like, okay, this is a guy who's new to this, so he's like really like going like harder than even probably he needs to. But it was like it was always very entertaining. I would say, though, the crowd chanting, who are you at him? So this is a crowd that has not been watching the DVDs, because if you watch the DVDs, you would know Shane Hagedorn by now, I would think.
I mean, even that CM Punk Sign of Dishonor match, he's the one that, he's the one that Punk signs helps him sign the WWE contract. So.
Yeah, so in case you were wondering if this was the first time that Hagedorn was a heel on DVD.
Yeah. I should remember that, yeah. After the match, Chris Hero and Necro Butcher hop the rail. They storm the ring. Chris Hero grabs the mic and he tells the crowd that Claudio is his student. He found him in Europe. He saw his untapped potential, and he brought him to the U.S. They became a damn successful tag team. At this point, Necro jumps on Hero's back and piggyback rides him like a little kid, which was something I did not remember and caught me off guard.
They should have done that shtick more often.
Yeah. Necro was really in these early Ring of Honor shows doing like a childlike gimmick almost, because there was another one when the crowd on a different show where the crowd was chanting something against CZW where like he covered his ears, like he couldn't stand, like of all things that would offend Necro Butcher, it was like a F word. But Hero says he and Claudio became the CZW tag champs. That gets some boos from the crowd, and adds that they won Jakara's Tag League Grand Prix, and they even spent a month as the tag team in Mexico. The crowd chants at this point, "Shut the hell up!"
Which is speaking of profanity, that's a very tame chant for an ROH crowd. Shut the hell up! It's only one step up from "shut the heck up," which would be a really funny chant now that I think about it.
I would love just a please be quiet chant. If I was a heel, I'd be off guard more than that, than shut the fuck up if someone started saying please be quiet. But,
Trevor, you're an influencer. Just tweet about it and it'll happen.
Hero calls Claudio his best friend and says at the last show in Manhattan, his best friend turned his back on him. Big Ring of Honor chant at this point. Claudio is playing that chant up. Hero gives Claudio one last chance to prove his allegiance to him and to CZW. Hero sticks out his hand when BJ Whitmer limps to the ring. Obviously, his ankle clearly screwed up. Poor guy. He attacks. Hero and Necro fight back. They start to beat BJ down, and Claudio is just watching at this point. So he makes like he's going to join them, but instead he fakes them out. European uppercuts Butcher instead. Hero throws a tantrum outside the ring, and he and Necro both leave back to the crowd as Claudio and Whitmer shake hands and they hug in the ring. So this angle is continuing, even if BJ Whitmer has to limp on a broken ankle to help carry it out.
Yeah, I mean, this was just, nothing super memorable, but just a fine little segment to progress the storyline, that would eventually have a pretty good payoff.
And that brings us to the Challenge Series match number 2. AJ Styles defeats Do Fixer of Dragon Kid and Genki Horiguchi with Ryo Saito in their corner in 12:31 when Styles pinned Horiguchi after he hit the Styles Clash. The Observer at the time wrote, excellent match and apparently worth going out of your way to see. Now, I think this is a sign of a match that does, as standards change, age a bit, because I would not call this a match that you have to go out of your way to see. I'd say this is strong good. This is like a 3.5-star match to me. It's fun, but like this is the kind of match that's showing, like Matt, to your point earlier about how Dragon Gate was influential. You see this kind of action. This is a lot more frequent. This is not saying like, oh my God, you don't see this, you don't know what you won't get to see it much in many other places. This is also a match where the first match where you saw a good portion of the crowd knew Dragon Gate because they're pumped as soon as they see Do Fixer. You can tell they're especially pumped for Dragon Kid. They're pumped to see AJ Styles. And then there's this special reaction when they're getting into the ring where it's like you can hear the crowd realize like, oh shit, we're going to get to see AJ Styles against Dragon Kid. And the crowd chants for Dragon Gate throughout the match. Some fans even know Horiguchi's HAJGE chant, which for fans who don't know that, Genki Horiguchi was starting to bald at a relatively young age. At H-A-J-G, I keep saying J, G-E, Hage is the word in Japanese for bald, so fans in Japan would chant that as like a support for him. So the fact that some fans knew that, shows you that there were some fairly educated fans in the show. It's a match that gets hotter and crazier as it goes on. It is funny, I found that people were so excited probably for the AJ Dragon Kid parts, but those to me are not the most exciting parts of the match. Like, they're entertaining, but usually when AJ's interacting with Dragon Kid here, a bunch of it is him just like kind of bullying Dragon Kid and not trying to like out high fly him. He's like shoving him down, pushing him around a bit, which I enjoyed, but I could see some fans being like, that's not kind of what we expected from AJ against Dragon Kid. But overall this is one of those high flyer performances, I would say, from Dragon Kid, where every spot you're wondering if he's going to be able to pull it off, and more often than not on this night he did. But there was one botch on like a deja vu head scissors that did not work, although AJ kind of saves it. He makes it look like he's kind of fighting it a bit, but it just definitely seemed like it was something that was supposed to come off smoother. A couple other little rough moments, but things that they pulled off. Really, though, fast-paced action, big dives. I like the finishing run with Horiguchi and Styles, which is just a series of them trading cradles and near falls until AJ catches him in the Styles Clash, which is a finish AJ likes to do. I've seen him use that, a bunch of times in his career, but it was a well-executed version of that match here. Chad, what did you think about this?
I was so happy we had this type of match on the show. Because I rank this as a Trevor Dane patented, very good, not quite great match. So I was delighted that we had that. No, I mean, I did think this was, very good. I was wondering what you would say about AJ, because I know y'all had been kind of critical of some of his Ring of Honor performances. I liked him here a good bit, and I liked him in the bully role. I thought he played that off very well and added a kind of neat contrast to the match overall. I thought as the match progressed, especially when the Dragon Rana was hit, the reaction was great off of that. Like you, Trevor, I was impressed with the HAGE chant to Genki Horiguchi because, really, of all the Dragon Gate contingent that came over on this tour, he's probably number 6 on the pecking order. Definitely. So, for that to elicit a chant was kind of a nice deep cut and showed like how knowledgeable the fan base was. At least a portion of it. And then I like that the announcers also played in that, he had his backside from heaven, and when he gets that as a near fall, it made that more dramatic as well. So yeah, very enjoyable match. It was quick too, which I thought was nice too. We'll get to it in the next match, but that is one to me positive of this is a series of 3 matches where, none of them were very long. Like, they didn't inflate any of the matches to kind of try to inherently, over accentuate the epicness of it, or, to extend the gravity of the challenge in itself. So I appreciated that. I think this match clocked in around 13 minutes. The final 2 or 3 minutes were very exciting. The Styles Clash was a fitting finishing maneuver for this match that looked brutal, played into the storyline of the match that, AJ was the bully that had the size advantage, which is typically not the case. Like, you usually don't see too many matches where AJ kind of plays into that he has the size advantage over someone and acts accordingly. So yeah, very, very good match that I enjoyed quite a bit.
Matt, what did you think of this? I mean, this is probably, this is the, we've seen Shima and even Shingo in Ring of Honor before, and we just saw another Dragon Gate match. This is technically, I guess, the first kind of Dragon Gate tag action, the thing that they'd become known for in Ring of Honor match in the promotion's history.
Well, yeah, that's actually something very similar to what I was going to say, which is this is really the first time since ROH started using the Dragon Gate guys, which I guess was only one other show and one match on this show before this, where you really felt like, all right, like this is what Dragon Gate has to offer. This is what they bring to the table. Because the other matches on Dragon Gate Invasion were just like, they weren't bad, but like they weren't that impressive. You know what I mean? This is the one where it's like, okay, this is Dragon Gate. I get it. But I agree with both of you about the quality. Very good, not great. I thought what Chad said about AJ was interesting. Like, he does do a really good job in the bully role, and I think it was a good choice. But I will say this. I think if this match was in TNA, this is not the match that AJ would have wrestled. Like, I think he would have done more and been faster paced and all this stuff. Now, I'm not saying that this was a bad choice. Like, this might have actually been better than, like, that alternative. But I still do think this is not exactly the full 2006 TNA AJ. But like I said, I agree with what both of you say about the match. I thought it was interesting, though, because I remember Meltzer writing about the famous Dragon Gate 6-man, the one that happens the night after this at Super Card of Honor. And they said the big thing was protecting the Dragon Rana, which is the move that wins that match. Spoiler alert. But they let AJ kick out of it here. I was pretty surprised to see someone kick out of the Dragon Rana, just remembering what Meltzer wrote about how that entire match the next night was set up to protect that move. It's kind of interesting. I mean, maybe that's not actually the point of the next night's match. I don't know, but that's one thing that sticks out of my memory. So I didn't remember that AJ kicked out of it here, and I thought that was surprising. But like a really good spot and a great pop, and I think a really good match. It was a lot of fun. I wonder what Cornette thought of it at the time. Do you think he actually, because he wasn't at this show, do you think he actually even ever watched these matches? Probably not, right?
You know what? I think it's the quote I have reserved for the next show or two, but I'm going to mention it here. I forget exactly what it is. It's going to be in my notes somewhere. But I think there's a quote where Cornette actually tells one of the newsletter guys that Dragon Gate is the future of wrestling and that he's really impressed by them this week. It's one of those mind-blowing and he would not be, if that's his true thoughts in 2022, he would not say that. That's the thing.
That's the thing. I don't it's just interesting to think is he just lying about what he thinks wrestling shouldn't be and deep down he knows that you can things are advanced and you could do more high spots and faster paced and different kind of selling or has his view of wrestling just calcified to the point where he just doesn't accept this stuff anymore.
Well, there was that quote we read from a newsletter that blew my mind from it was either 2003 or 2004 where they said some of the Special K guys I think were talking to Cornette and were Cornette gave us great advice. You would think again just the idea of Cornette talking to random Special K guys or you think it'd just be, if you think of modern day Cornette you would have a very particular idea of him just ranting at them, but apparently they had very productive no, he was great with us.
Maybe his good advice was don't do that. Don't do that anymore.
But yeah, I think Cornette, a lot. I mean, I think he's probably his beliefs are kind of calcified in some not great ways, and I think he's leaning into a lot of things because it's become kind of a thing he can sell to people. But this was the era, I guess, when it wasn't quite where he could still tell people that guys doing the flippy doos was actually neat and not going to ruin the business. A different time, Matt. The one thing I forgot to mention about the match, I love Genki Horiguchi's top rope foot stomp because he doesn't jump off the top turnbuckle, he just walks off of it and drops. And there's something about that that's different, that somehow, even though he's coming at it from less height, for some reason, just because no one else does it that way, it seems more painful, he's just taking a step off the buckle and then just falling straight down. There's something about that to me I think was, watch for that in this match. It's really, in my opinion, neato. But that brings us to the third in the Challenge Series matches, the decisive match, who is better, Ring of Honor or Dragon Gate? It is Dragon Gate, because Blood Generation of CIMA, Masato Yoshino, and Naruki Doi defeat Generation Next of Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and Roderick Strong in 15:59 when CIMA pins Evans after he hits the Schwein. Chad, you said, you talked about the last match, talking about how these Dragon Gate matches kind of don't overstay their welcome. I guess you should get first crack at this, especially because, this is the longest one, and even this one comes in at a relatively tight, basically 16 minutes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought this match was great. I think it kind of starts out, fine, well enough. There is one, kind of unfortunate botch where Jack Evans overshoots Arana and Doi just kind of flips with it and goes out of the ring. It looked kind of wild enough that it's maybe if you kind of squint, it kind of works, but it was definitely a botch. But I the thing I like probably the most about this match is I think they established pretty early on that, for all his spectacular moves that he could pull off, Jack Evans is someone that when you're in kind of a trio setting, he could be taken advantage of and exploited, and he's certainly targeted in this match by the Blood Generation contingents, and it leads to a very dramatic final probably 4 or 5 minutes that I thought was outstanding. I didn't remember offhand who won this match, and I certainly didn't remember exactly what the finish was, and I was blown away by how kind of fluidly they went through the spots, went with the kind of cutoffs and the teases. Everything about this I thought was excellent. I loved the Yoshino and CIMA double kind of Van Terminator or whatever that they do from the corner. There was just so many great spots, ending with CIMA getting the win that I thought was appropriate. Also the Roderick Strong suplex into the 450 and then him kind of landing on his feet and getting into the super kick. I thought that was fabulous. Like as shoddy as Ring of Honor's production can be around this time with missing stuff and the lighting and whatnot, I thought the camera work here was really well done, and that when they did that shot, you couldn't see that the wrestler, I can't even remember who it was, either Doi or Yoshino, who Evans was supposed to do the 450 on. You couldn't see that they were no longer like on the mat. So it was a surprise when he landed on his feet. And then also you couldn't see CIMA in frame until Evans does land on his feet, and then right in frame, CIMA kills him with the super kick. Just a really exciting, excellent match, I thought. I thought this showcased the Dragon Gate style as well as it could, and I thought it really made Generation Next look like a bona fide faction too, because you had some great character work, like once pops in the corner, Roderick Strong, and they're backing away like, please don't chop me, Roderick, and then he absolutely lights them up with chops. So that was well done. Aries had a good connection with the crowd here. And then, Evans was the, like you get the crowd still liking the Dragon Gates guys, but Evans is certainly sympathetic, and kind of you're able to see a storyline within the move. So overall, I thought this was great. I heap a lot of praise on this match. It was very, very enjoyable.
Matt, this is a match, that probably should get some more attention because, obviously and unfortunately, it gets completely overshadowed by a tag match that happens the very next night. But it's easy to forget. Part of me wonders, Matt, do you ever wonder, I was wondering after watching this match, in a world where the Dragon Gate 6-man on the next night doesn't happen, Does this match have? I mean, I don't think this match would have the same level of impact, but is this kind of remembered as a big match? Probably not, but it's an interesting kind of hypothetical, I would say.
Yeah, oh, sorry, my headset fell off for a second there. So sorry if there was weird noise. But it's like, so if you want to like rate these 3 Dragon Gate challenge matches on the scale of like bringing the Dragon Gate style to America, I would say the Saito Yang match rates probably like on like 1. And I'd say the Dragon Kid and Horiguchi versus Styles and Seidel match rates maybe like a 6. I'd say this would be an 8, right? And the match the next night with Blood Generation against Do Fixer is like a 10. Or maybe maybe the real Dragon Gate lovers would probably say, no, it's not a full 10, maybe it's a 9. But it's higher than this. But this is pretty close, I think. And it's interesting because like, have Aries and Strong and Evans ever had a chance to do that? So I know Evans had been in Japan just like a month earlier. I mean, that's when he came and
Evans
had
and
jet
Strong
lag.
had both had 1 tour each so far.
Yeah, and Aries had not, right?
Yeah, Aries had he would later on that year, I think, but yeah, he was the one guy that had not yet gotten to go over there.
Right, so it makes sense that this is the team that they picked to do this, and it was like, they didn't quite fully get the full Dragon Gate level of like quickness and all that stuff, but like they came pretty damn close, I would say. Really admirable try. They did great for this. Like, this was like a new thing. Like, we'd never seen. Remember we talked about on Best in the World how Evans and Strong against the Briscoes was state of the art, and I said, well, that's going to be actually obsolete in about a week. Because this is the new state of the art. There's never been an ROH match like this before. And, they really just go hard and they go at it and like, just like boom, boom, boom. And like, yeah, there's like maybe a couple little things that Evans, botched Rana, but that final segment is so impressive and, so fast. And you could tell Generation Next is having a lot of fun, just like trying to keep up with Blood Generation. And I guess, like I said, I don't think they quite get there, but like they get pretty damn close. So I like that. There is that, very brief segment where things do slow down while Blood Generation get the heat on Evans. And like, it's not just that they're fast-paced moves. They have a ton of charisma and personality that helps them get over too. Like you said, probably more than Do Fixer. So I think that helps a lot too. Like they're just a great trio. And yeah, this match was so much fun. In some ways, probably because it involves, wrestlers that I follow closely. And, there's some things I like about this match even more than I like about the more famous match that happens the next night. Not that it's a better match, but, there's just like little things that I might enjoy more, like just Jack Evans and Roderick Strong doing their Jack Evans and Roderick Strong stuff, but, but it's for what it is. It's great. Like, I think this match is just a hell of a lot of fun. And, having, like I mentioned, we're recording this right after the AEW had their trios title tournament. So, where you get to see, a modern version was heavily influenced by this style. And, you got Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay and like doing all this stuff. But this holds up pretty well even after watching that stuff that happened more than 16 years later. So I think that speaks well of it.
Yeah, watching Ring of Honor show by show from the beginning, as we do, Matt, I think sometimes you kind of fall into a groove of nostalgia where, like, even like whenever I watch old wrestling, like Memphis wrestling or something, once you watch a lot of old wrestling, I find you kind of get good at, you calibrate your expectations for whatever you're watching. You kind of forget about everything you've seen since sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And I kind of forgot watching, rewatching every Ring of Honor show that, the style was a little bit slower than wrestling today. And it's weird. Like when I watched this match, all of a sudden I just got smacked in the face with modern wrestling. Like I started watching this match and I just thought, all of a sudden this thought popped in my head, like, oh, there it is. Like, this is where it all starts. Like, this is where the wrestling we see today, so often, this is where it starts really spreading is this match. Cause it was just like, it's not just a speed. It is a new speed, but it's a sheer density of moves. Like, in the final minutes, there's just so much happening so quickly, it's hard to absorb it all. I looked at online reviews after I wrote my notes, as I sometimes do, and I believe it was Brad Garoon at 411 Mania who wrote a review of the show. He remarked how it was hard to even recap it all, and he's not the only person I said who like wrote something like that. And I feel like the one thing Dragon Gate brought is kind of like a changing philosophy of wrestling, and I would compare it to kind of like if you go to a fireworks show, a lot of times, at least in the fireworks shows I've been to, like most of the show is one firework at a time, and they're all spaced out, and you kind of appreciate, oh, that one's shaped like a heart, oh, that one's a neat color, blah blah blah, and then at the very end of the show, they just fire like everything they have left at the same time, and it's just like this big giant mess that lights up the entire sky. It makes it seem like it's day for a second, and it's kind of amazing, but you can't really appreciate everything individually. It's just, and I feel like this is where wrestling kind of changed, where up till now, even in Ring of Honor, there was this, even the fast-paced matches, it was like, keep it slow enough that like every move can be kind of absorbed on its own. And I feel like with matches like this Dragon Gate match, like, they're going so fast by the end and doing so many incredible things, you can't really kind of appreciate each move on its own because you're not getting a chance to breathe. But that's the point. The point is you're kind of entertained by just that you can't handle it all. The overwhelmingness of it is part of like the fun of it. And I feel like that's where wrestling really changes. And it starts with Dragon Gate bringing these kind of matches here. And I agree that I thought this was great. I would put this at like 4 stars flat. I think it does hold up well considering how influential the style has gotten. I thought Generation X, Matt, like you said, did really acquit themselves well to this match. Aries, I thought even maybe took a little bit of a back seat here. I actually thought their control sequence was better than the Blood Generation control sequence, which was kind of slow. And I did think that the Blood Generation sequence, like, very charismatic, but I thought it was funny how little effort they made to like distract the ref, where when they would get in the ring to do triple teams, they literally just looked at the referee and pointed to the opposite corner, like, look over there. Like, they made like no artistry about doing it, just like hey, please look over here.
I approve of that because it means they've watched Ring of Honor and know that there are no disqualifications, even though they pretend there are.
Yeah, and the spots at the end, you got like the double van Terminator, the all that stuff, just amazing. Other thing that's crazy, maybe not crazy, but people, whenever they saw like a new breakneck kind of cutting edge style, you'd hear so many people go, these guys are all going to be crippled. They're all going to be done in 5 years, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to note that all 6 of the guys, Dragon Gate guys that we've seen on the show, other than Yoshino, who only retired last year, all of them are still wrestling today.
Yeah, like and a lot of them are still doing very athletic type matches.
Yeah, even though they're in their 40s, like Dragon Kid, all of them are still wrestling to this day. So
yeah, I do want to add one other thing, because you mentioned, that it was so fast that it was hard to keep up with, recapping the action. I will say this match I was still able to write down like the moves that coming at the final sequence, like they were very fast, but like the pace was enough that I could still do it. For the when we do the Super Card of Honor match, I'm not even going to take notes. Like, unless there's something I really forgot, I'm just telling you right now. Like, I've seen that match enough. Like, I'm not going to write down the moves. Like, it's just like that's just like another level.
So great match. Worth going out of your way to see. And I would say, for me personally, it's either this or, depending on how you view the Whitmer Jacobs match. I mean, those are, to me, the 2 matches you need to see coming out of this show. After the match, the crowd chants that was awesome. Another big appreciation for this match. And then next, we get a 5-minute video recapping the Samoa Joe Christopher Daniels feud with a graphic telling us it's Ring of Honor's longest running rivalry.
And longest running video, geez.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort they clearly went here, but so much of this video was just random spots from all their Ring of Honor matches, and it went so long to the point where it felt like by the end you had rewatched every single match these two had in full.
It's crazy that nobody was like, hey, we could edit like the last 2 minutes of this and just completely chop it off and it would be better.
Yeah, there's a natural endpoint to this video because there's an on-screen graphic that tells like it'll be settled, this feud at the triple shot with 3 different match types. But after that, they just keep showing random match clips for like another minute or 2, and then it all ends with a graphic that says who is the better man, which I don't know, seems like more of a moral question, but I will say, it is a weird way to end a feud. So for people that haven't been following through the years or don't remember, and I don't blame you, this whole feud was supposed to end like shows earlier at that Midwest double shot where it was supposed to be, I think Joe and Daniels would wrestle each other both nights. One would be like a 30-minute Iron Man match. I think one was like no holds barred or something, some other gimmick. And then Joe got, I think, the staff. He had to postpone. And so now they've instead re-advertised that this triple shot will be the end, except the way the triple shot is end, it's going to be a best of 3. The first match tonight is a singles, then it's a 3-way, then it's a 4-way, which seems like the most anticlimactic way to end the feud. And more than that, what if someone that isn't Daniels or Joe wins the 3-way and the 4-way? Like, or wins one of them, and then, you could end this feud 1-1-1 could potentially if the booking of the matches happened a certain way. But,
yes, the booking is weird, but I will try not to fault the wrestlers for that.
But I presume why those matches fell in the order they did is this show could use a bigger match where the next 2 nights kind of don't, so you could have a 3-way and a 4-way.
Also, they had the AJ and Yang as part of the Dragon Gate Challenge on this show.
Yeah, so you get some, they have to shuffle things around, but it does create this weirdness where the blow-off match is really not the blow-off match. But that brings us to that match, Matt, the main event of our show. Christopher Daniels with Alice in Danger defeats Samoa Joe via pinfall in 16:53 after he hit 3 consecutive best moonsaults ever. So Christopher Daniels finally gets to pin Samoa Joe in Ring of Honor in a singles match. He had in a multi-man match, but never in a singles. And before we get to the match, Daniel's music plays for a while, and then it stops, and then it goes to Samoa Joe's "The Champ is Here" bit, and then Daniels comes out opening his robe to reveal the TNA X Division Championships, which I thought was a cute moment. And then Joe charges at him from the ring. The match starts with a pre-match brawl. But Matt, we've seen a bunch of Samoa Joe and Christopher Daniels. How do you think this one stacks up?
So I'm expecting to be the high vote on this match because I know I've liked the matches between these two guys more than you have in general, Trevor.
Mm-hmm.
But I like this a lot. Like first of all, I like that it was different than their other matches, which are more slow building matches. This match got on my good side immediately by Joe cutting off Daniel's entrance because I've said this a few times. That entrance is too fucking long. I thought that back when I would go to these shows, and I especially think it when they feel the need to show the full entrance on the DVDs, where he just like walks around to all 4 corners, gets on the apron, gets on the turnbuckles and gets the crowd to cheer on every side, and it's just like takes his time. It's just like, come on, like get this thing going. So I was very happy that they started hot, which again is just different than a lot of ROH matches. I like when things are different, and the crowd is really hot. Like for the brawl in the aisle, they're pretty hot and split. With the dueling chants during the match, and the match really moves. I think a lot of Joe's ROH matches that I haven't been as into have been slower, and in 2003 he got over by doing pretty fast-paced matches. And I like that this match is pretty fast-paced. They don't really take their time. There are a couple of times where they slow things down and Joe puts on a chin lock at one point, but it's never for that long. They go to some of their bigger spots. It's not that long of a match. Joe does some pretty hard kicks. He gets that Boston Crab, and Daniels makes the rope, and then they go to the floor pretty quick, and Daniels hits two ole ole kicks. The crowd loves that, and they eventually get back in the ring. Joe goes for the Muscle Buster twice. At the first time, Daniels takes Joe over the top rope. The second time, he escapes out the back, and Joe gets the choke on a couple times. Daniels hits the iconoclasm, and both guys can't follow up. It's just like a real accelerated pace for these guys, which I actually think makes a lot of sense considering all the fast-paced action that we've seen tonight. Like, obviously it's not as fast as the Dragon Gate matches or anywhere close, but it's much faster than their other matches. And I really like the final few minutes. It's not like it's a super dramatic finish, but when Joe has Daniels in his series of signature holds, like where he does the crossface into the STF and all that stuff. There's like a dueling "please don't tap" and tap chant, and it has a good storyline. I like that this is Daniel's match where it's like, okay, it's Daniel's turn to win, and he does. I like the way they finish it. Again, not super dramatic. There's really only one really big near fall, which is when Joe kicks out of the Angel's wing, so they don't overdo the near falls. But then right after that, Daniels hits 3 consecutive best moonsaults ever, like you said, gets the win. So I don't know. The only thing that made the win anything less than clean was that at one point when Joe was running the ropes, Danger grabbed Joe's leg. Which maybe wasn't necessary, but I guess it makes sense in the sense that Joe always had Daniel's number, so he needed that one little X factor to win. I actually thought the finish could have been more dramatic, but then I thought, like, actually it's kind of better that it wasn't. I just like that, like, it was direct, it was straight ahead, it didn't really follow a formula, and I enjoyed it. Was it as good as, like, the Dragon Gate match that came before it? No, but I think they did a good job doing something different and exciting, and I think it was a worthwhile main event.
Chad, what'd you think?
I did like it. I thought it kind of topped out it very good. This is kind of an interesting pairing for me in that, they've had a lot of matches and a lot of interactions with each other, but the only match, like, offhand that I could remember, like, really, really loving is actually their Glory by Honor match from 2003. That's the most memorable for that. So I did, in some ways, like the video package ahead of time and kind of giving me a refresh. I think they should have just made this kind of the definitive feud ender because it felt like the objective of this match was to get Christopher Daniels kind of a nice definitive win when he kind of been certainly working from underneath throughout the feud and had been playing second fiddle to Joe throughout. So as the match, it did have a nice pace to it. Joe went for the muscle buster really early, which surprised me. And then I agree with what Matt said as he ran down the finishing stretch. Like it wasn't necessarily a dramatic finish per se with a lot of momentum shifts. But, for what they were trying to accomplish, I did appreciate that where, Joe does get the kind of save face by kicking out of the Angel Wings, but immediately Daniels hits 3 best moonsaults ever. And I did like that he didn't try to pin after the first one or even the second one. He really drives it home that, he was going to do this big grandiose sequence to finally put Samoa Joe away, and he does. So, not a classic, but I did think it was a very good match and kind of fit the theme of the night again of another match that didn't really overstay its welcome. So I appreciated that as well. It was a pretty tidy match lengthwise as well. So a very good effort overall.
Oh, how the tables have turned, Chad. You've private joked a lot about the classic Trevor Dame, very good, not great, liking matches less than Matt. That sounded awful Trevor Dame-ish with this very good, not great, not quite the level of Matt. But you know what? I agree with you, Chad. And now you know the feeling. But no, seriously.
See, I thought you were setting up for like, I like this match even more. But you just do the thing. You just liked it the level that everyone would have expected you to like it. So
yeah, I think this is a 3. I think this is a 3.5 star match. I think this is good. I appreciate the parts that are different. I like the crowd brawl. I like the definitive ending with the 3 BMEs. I liked, I feel like Joe a lot of times does a little bit more athletic stuff with Daniels than he does with other people. Like I was shocked that Joe took an iconoclasm. He goes up big for the last rights. He goes up big. He does a great 2.999 kick out on the Blue Thunder Bomb. He even goes over the top to the floor on a body scissors. From Daniels. So I appreciate that stuff. But most of this match is not those moments. It's a match where I feel like it's pretty darn good, but not great. I've seen these guys have a lot of matches at that level.
Trevor, say that again.
Pretty darn good, but not great.
Okay, just making sure.
Matt, I will say, I think Chad had a point I want to make, which is great, which is I feel like this is one of those feuds, kind of like I would say Joe versus Homicide, where just like I believe their match at the first Do or Die is the best match they ever had, and a legitimately fantastic match, and they've had a lot of really good matches since then, but never topped it or met it. I agree with Chad. Like, I think the best match Joe and Daniels ever had was that Glory by Honor 2 match. And although we've seen them get lots of kicks in the can since, I think this one's probably the best one they've had, at least in Ring of Honor since then. I still wouldn't put this at Glory by Honor 2 level. Would you?
Would I? No, but I probably liked it a little bit more than you did. I might even go like flat 4 on it. 3 3/4, 4 stars. Like, I really thought it was a very, very, very enjoyable main event.
Yeah, and then like you, I also wondered, like, why is Allison Danger grabbing the leg when Daniels is a face? And seemingly the point of this match was to give Daniels his big triumphant, finally, like, win over Joe. But, still an enjoyable match, and the crowd was into it. And we go to the Observer because Dave Meltzer found David, kind of a grumpy Gus on this show. So we'll go to the Observer. Dave wrote about the booking of this match, not the match itself. Quote, I've written something like this before a few times, but TNA needs to take more of an interest in what its talent does on indie shows. WWE would never allow its top people to do jobs if they would allow them to work indies, which they really don't except for rare exceptions. But I know of instances, and the recent Punk appearance was one, where even an OVW guy wasn't allowed to do a job here if he appeared. If Joe didn't have his winning streak gimmick, it really wouldn't be a big deal. But they trumpet that streak, and Joe is over, but the streak isn't over at all. I'm not saying doing a job on this show for Christopher Daniels is the reason why the streak hasn't been over for months, or even that few other jobs he's done elsewhere is the reason. But to me, you have to protect your storylines, or why do them? If it was up to me, I wouldn't allow Daniels or Joe to job in Ring of Honor at least until Joe's streak is up and Daniels no longer has the belt. If you're against each other at this point, you either change the booking or go the time limit. And even then, I wouldn't be hardline about it after, but I wouldn't allow it without office approval to make sure it doesn't contradict the storyline. You say it's 500 fans in Detroit, which is worse because that's theoretically a key TNA market, but everyone hears about it, at least as long as the TNA fan base is so hardcore oriented. I know just lost a few months back to Jay Lethal, so this isn't the first time, and if I was Ring of Honor, the last thing I'd want is to be given ground rules on how to use talent. So that was Dave's big takeaway, was basically that, and yeah, I guess that is something I failed to mention, which is Joe was going in TNA at this point as on an unbeaten streak, and Daniels was coming in with the X Division title.
So how did Daniels get the X Division title? He won it like in a 3-way where he didn't pin Joe, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah. So they are. Dave kind of going a little wild on the booking, but you can see. I think sometimes Dave worries about this kind of stuff more than he should, as we go back to like the Kenta Joe match, the Joe Kobashi match, where Dave in the lead up for months was like, you can't book Kobashi versus Joe because Joe will have to lose, and you can't have Joe lose for Ring of Honor's sake. And it's like, Dave, that's not going to matter at all. And I feel like this is a little more valid than that, I believe, but I still feel like he's worrying a bit too much about a lot of this. But
no, I think honestly it's way too much. Like, it's an old fashioned way of thinking. Obviously wins and losses matter, but like they matter on the show of that promotion. You know what I mean? Like, if something happens outside the promotion, I don't think anyone takes it into account when they're talking about the wrestlers in that promotion. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the crowd really cares at all. So I think that, I don't know if he's actually gotten this, sort of this mindset out of, or this philosophy out of his head anymore, but I don't think it was really relevant in 2006, and I definitely don't think it is now.
Well, that brings us to the big angle after the match, because after the match, Daniels is celebrating finally beating Joe in a singles match after all these years, when Necro Butcher and Chris Hero jump back into the ring. Dave Prazak on commentary shouts, "Why do they have to ruin this moment?" Hero gets on the mic and says it'll take a lot more than a European uppercut to keep him and Necro Butcher out of this ring. Ring of Honor can kiss his ass. Daniels wants to fight them, but Allison Danger begs him not to the point of tears. Really selling this big that she, for whatever reason, does not want him involved in this.
To the point where Daniels is like, "What the hell is wrong with you, Allison?" Like, she was like really getting intense.
Yeah, like he listens to her, but he's like, what the hell? Like, why are you freaking out this bad? But that does get kind of Daniels out of the segment and out of this part of the feud. Hero cuts a promo we can't really hear when an ailing Joe steps back in the ring. Hero charges at him. They brawl with Joe getting the advantage until Necro joins in. They put the boots, or I guess I should say the boots and bare feet in Necro's case to Joe until Whitmer comes back in the ring. Poor Whitmer again having to come back out with the broken ankle. He gives them both hard chair shots to the head. Meltzer would write in The Observer that Necro had his head split open hard way from that chair shot. Ring of Honor students try and drag Hero and Butcher to the back, but they fight heartily. Joe gives Necro a boot through the ropes as Necro's staying outside. I wrote in my notes, Bobby Dempsey showing almost a full moon during this segment, because God bless Bobby Dempsey, but his pants were falling down as he was trying to hold these guys back. We get a brief BJ Whitmer chant. Joe gets on the mic and tells Necro if he wants to get his ass kicked, then they can fight one-on-one and he'll knock him out again. Joe says this isn't the best night to give a battle cry because obviously he just lost. But he tells CCW they didn't get the attention of Ring of Honor's big guns until now, which seems like kind of a dick thing to say when Whitmer is standing right beside him and he's been involved in this every step of the way. But Joe says if you want a war, you go to war with Joe and BJ, and tonight Joe declares war on CZW. He calls John Zandig a fat, talentless piece of shit and asks him to come here too. He starts screaming, telling them to bring their glass tubes, their weed whackers, everything else, and he'll take them out with what God gave him. These fists, his wrestling ability, and the boys in the back. Huge crowd reaction to all of this.
God gave him his wrestling ability, so he didn't train to learn it.
And God also gave him the boys in the back.
That's right.
Huge crowd reaction, loud Ring of Honor chant. Joe says ROH is the best in the world, has to offer, and Ring of Honor is pro wrestling. I thought this was a great rally the troops closing promo.
This promo was fucking awesome. Just badass, one of the highlights of the whole feud to me. And by the way, when BJ hit Necro with that chair, I think I saw he did split him open hard way, but also he broke the chair. The chair was shattered basically after that chair shot. Shit's crazy. People was it's bad that they were hitting each other that hard in the head with chairs.
Yeah, I mean, this was we talked about it felt like for a while every show the ROH feud CZW angle was getting bigger and better and more entertaining. And then the last show or two, you can't constantly top yourself every show. So I think we said the last show, that was the first time they kind of didn't top themselves. And, this angle here, you get this whole new dimension, and that Joe promo, I would say, is the best promo of the whole storyline so far. So yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about Cornette, how he was cutting these good promos. And of course there were things about him we didn't like. Just we thought they were the tone was a little off, even though he's a great promo and they were really good. This is the sort of promo that you want to see. This hit perfectly.
Yeah. And we cut to, speaking of a big drop-off in promo quality, we cut to Lance Storm backstage somewhere. Storm says he's been watching Bryan Danielson's title defenses, and the more he sees of his reign, the more he thinks he wants to be a part of it, which it's one of those funny moments where this was obviously taped weeks or months ago when the deal was made, but the idea of Lance Storm promo where he acts I'm kind of getting tempted when he's in real life, his match happens 2 days later.
That's crazy. And by the way, that promo, it was either taped weeks or months ago, or it's possible also that it was all taped the night that he wrestled Danielson, including the one at Best in the World. That's possible too. Because I feel like the background was the same as the one that Cornette was doing, and I know Cornette wasn't there in Detroit, but he was in Chicago, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say that would lend some theory, because we go to the very last segment on the show, somewhere else backstage somewhere, except it looks just like you said, Matt, where Lance Storm just was. Jim Cornette's on his phone. He's talking to a mystery person who was telling Jim, I guess, we can only hear one side of the conversation, which is Jim's, but it sounds like someone's telling him who knocked out his tooth on a recent Ring of Honor show in that backstage melee with the CCW guys. Cornette promises there will be no repercussions for this person on the phone if they will tell Jim who did it. He says he'll not mention their name. The person tells him who it is, and although we don't hear, Cornette says you're never going to see that son of a bitch again. And then we get our usual to be continued graphic. So another one of the great, there's nothing Gabe loved more then a Ring of Honor mystery, and when we have another mystery, the Who knocked out Jim Cornette's tooth angle. So tune in next time to find out the shocking answer to that one, folks. And that brings us to the end of Dragon Gate Challenge, the start of the big triple shot. Chad, what'd you think about this show? Obviously, you, like you said, you've been listening to the show, our podcast, but have not been revisiting the show. So how did it feel to just kind of drop in on like mid 2006 Ring of Honor on a show that's, not notable, but maybe people, gets overshadowed by the two shows that follow it?
Right. I'm interested to hear what you guys say overall, because to me, I had a very enjoyable time watching the show. This show goes right up to the 3-hour kind of DVD time limit of most of their shows. Is about 2 hours and 58 minutes, and it was easy for me to watch through in one setting. No problem with that. So I thought it was a really good show, and to me, this is the type of show that kind of accentuates when a promotion is on a roll, because if you have kind of a show this good, which is a very good, I would even classify borderline great show. If you have a show this good, but it's not one of the more memorable shows from this promotion's run, then the promotion as a whole is really kind of firing on all cylinders. It's something we're kind of going through now with WCW 1996, and they're having this kind of run of nitros, and their pay-per-views are kind of the same. And even Fall Brawl 1996 is kind of like that. Like that's a great pay-per-view that gets overshadowed by a lot of the other great pay-per-views surrounding it and a lot of the other nitros. And that's how I felt here. Like I thought it was a very good, enjoyable show with 2 great matches, a couple of other very good matches, and then nothing that was outright horrible. So a easy thumbs up show for me.
Yeah, I enjoyed this show quite a bit. Matt and I have talked about recently how, like, a lot of times we praised a recent Ring of Honor show by, like, showing a lot of times with Ring of Honor in the era before this, like, it was either a show that had the great match, or like kind of the great angle, or like the great kind of consistency of quality. And while there was maybe a few down points on the show, I think you get 2 great matches, you get some good matches. There's nothing that's really bad on this show at all. And you get like the great Joe promo, you get some angles building up, the next couple shows. Like, to me, this was one of those shows again where I didn't feel like I really had to, like, I wasn't missing out on some aspect of Ring of Honor that, like, I got a lot of the different parts of it that I really liked in this show. So yeah, it's hard to say that a show in the triple shot is a hidden gem, but people sleep on the show compared to the other two. And this is a pretty darn good show in its own right, I would say. Matt, do you agree with us, or you going to go crazy, Matt? You going to say, you know what? You lied about how you felt about all the matches you just reviewed.
Yeah. Just listeners, like, how many shows have we reviewed, period, where we just, like, one match after another, we're like, this is good, this is really good, this is really good. Like, we are firmly now in the ROH era where it's like they just have, like, top to bottom high quality, and that wasn't always the case. Even recently, this is probably considered the least essential show of the triple shot, and maybe even of the whole Milestone series. But in terms of, like, wrestling quality and a good crowd, like, this is pretty high up there on shows we reviewed. This is a damn good show. And, I feel like ROH just keeps getting better at this era. Like, we remember this time in 2006 as a really great time in ROH. And I feel like these shows when we go back and watch, it's like, it's living up to the reputation.
Yeah.
They really have, like, turned a corner in terms of figuring out how to put on these just, like, barn burner shows. And for, like you said, this is, like, kind of like the B show of the Milestone series, and it's fucking great. For what it is anyway, maybe like no big title matches, I'd say the most dramatic moment, in terms of, like, historically, is the Jimmy Jacobs match, and that was an accident, but just, like, ROH is a show supposed to be about wrestling quality, and this show had it, so who can complain?
Yeah, and that brings us to the end of the show. So, Chad, chance to plug things. I know I mentioned both your old podcast and your current podcast up top, but anything you want to plug, social media, whatever. This is your chance, sir.
Sure. Doing the Wrestling Warzone podcast on the North-South podcast connection podcast feed. The show after this show drops that me and Justin will be reviewing is Halloween Havoc 1996, which is it's always fun to do the WCW pay-per-views. Knowing my previous podcast and where the big boys play, so it does feel like a little bit of a continuation of that. And the good thing about that show too now is WWF had been kind of the drizzling shits, I would say, for the last couple of months. And it finally feels like they're starting to turn the corner with Brett returning, Stone Cold, becoming Stone Cold in earnest, and so it's exciting where we should be in a bit of a stretch here where both shows are pretty high quality.
And Halloween Havoc 96 is the show where Hulk Hogan wears a ridiculous wig, right?
Yes, I think it's like I actually haven't watched that for our prep. We're recording Tuesday, so I got to get on it. But he's filming Three Ninjas, High Noon, and Mega Mountain. So on the go home promo, he's on set, and I don't know if he had to cut his hair for that or if it's some wig situation. So I'm interested to see. But his haircut for the go home promo was pretty wild. So I believe that's what he wears into the match. So it's quite a unique look, we should say.
Yes.
The show is whole episode has been great, but if nothing else, even if the show had been terrible, it was worth it just to hear Chad Campbell say Three Ninjas, High Noon at Mega Mountain. But yeah, again, I just want to give one more plug personally. Chad, between where the big boys play and the Wrestling Warzone, he's covering all the wrestling from WCW and WWE, or a lot of it from the 80s to the 90s. And, a lot of people do it, but to me, he's one of my favorite people to listen to talk about that stuff. So if you have not heard him talk, you are in for a treat to have such a backlog. I envy you. And to me, Chad is just, I would say he's one of my comfort listens. If I'm sick or something, I will listen to an old show of his because there's just something that is comforting. I don't know if it's the voice. I don't know if it's just the nice, easygoing demeanor. I don't know if he's just because I like his takes. Just good stuff. So again, emphatic plug here.
I agree. And again, thank you so much, Chad, for being on. This was honestly, it's kind of crazy to say like a dream come true because you were probably the biggest influence on the show existing, and also we didn't realize this was going to happen, but really one of the most important people in terms of anyone even hearing about it. So, Trevor, how many Twitter followers did you even have in March of 2017?
I did not have that many. It has grown like a fungus in about as a positive influence in my life. But yeah, again, great stuff. And so if you want to get in contact with us, it's at Trevor Dame, at Mayor MGF. Through the years, that's THROH for our email at gmail.com. And yeah, again, and also the Pro Wrestling Only plugs for, I don't check that thread much these days, but we have a couple listeners that write some very long, insightful posts about their thoughts on the shows sometimes. And, again, I say even there, go to the match listings and read, there are some great debates of old matches, or not even debates, just I love looking up that stuff. That's one of my favorite places to read reviews about old matches when I'm rewatching old stuff. So if there's nothing else you gain from the show, it's just there's a bounty of content you should listen to, and I hate referring to it as content. But anyway, next time on the show, we get into maybe one of the biggest shows we will ever cover, and that is Supercard of Honor, the Dragon Gate 6-man everyone talks about, Roddy versus Danielson one more time, whole bunch of other stuff. That show's over 4 hours long. I am frightened. We might have a guest. I hope that podcast can be under 18 hours. I am scared.
Yeah, we might not be back. We might not be back that quick, but we'll try. But yes,
it might be a little while. But
yes, until next time, have a Naruki Doi.
Have a great time.